Holding coming out, being watched very closely by Theodore. They give the puck back now to Yossi, cutting in. He scores! Roman Yossi scores! And the Predators now are 18 games into an unbeaten streak. Oh my! 5-4 the final.
The Predators never lose anymore, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. That was the call last night in overtime. Roman Yossi with the game winner. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian's here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
How about that game last night?
That was a good one.
How about it? I've been thinking all day in my entire Predators fandom, which I'm not going to lie to you, I went to games the first year and, I sprinkled here and there, but I really consider myself a Predators fan starting in 2011. That year where they, got good. And I've been going all the way back trying to think of a game that I can remember where I just felt so good about the team, the game, the moment, everything else that was like last night's game, and I'm having a hard time doing it. There was a game, I remember, I was actually looking it up before we jumped on the air. There was a game in 2012, I think, where Anders Lindback was playing goal, I believe against the Dallas Stars. And I remember that game of being one of those big kind of games where the team just showed so much grit. They killed off a 5-on-3 at the end of the game, and it just felt like, that Predators team had some juice in them. And they ended up losing in the second round because Mike Smith caught on fire, but that was a good hockey team. That wasn't as good as this team, but that was a good team. Last night was an all-timer, folks. As far as regular season games are concerned, I thought last night was one of the most exciting, one of the most shocking, one of the most exhilarating come-from-behind victories I've ever seen, if not the most exciting, shocking, and exhilarating victory in come-from-behind fashion I've ever seen in the regular season from the Predators. They started off sluggish last night. They kind of started off like I was last night. When we get done with the show at 6 o'clock and I stay for the game, I usually spend that hour in between 6 and 7 kind of just, just socializing and chatting and high-fiving and, all the whatever. But, I'm pretty tired after the show's over, and I got an hour of socializing, and I'm a little sluggish. And last night, Vegas came out the gates flying up and down the ice. I talk about the Vancouver Canucks, that 2011 playoff series. That's what it looked like. They were skating circles around the Predators early on. And I was almost like, oh, boy, this is not going to be pretty. Lauzon returns into the lineup for the first time in a couple of weeks, and there's a turnover in their own end, and Lauzon can't get to the puck, and he loses the battle, and it sets a guy up right in front of the net, and now all of a sudden it's 2-0, and I'm like, whew, not the start they wanted. And the Predators, to their credit, even when Vegas was on the attack in the first period and the second period, the Predators did not pack it in. They had opportunities in the first period. They were attacking the net, and they hit a couple of posts, and Evangelista had a couple of them, and they just were not burying their chances. But I sat there in the crowd last night, and I was like, you know what? I can live with this. When it was 4-2 in the third period, and the shots were about even, and I know that the Predators had hit a couple of posts here, and they started off sluggish there, and Vegas, this was a huge game for them. And let's not take anything away from them because those guys are so good. Like Eichel and Hanifin, and, they've always had Marchessault, and like those guys, Carlson, McNabb, those guys are so big, so fast. I see up close and personal why they're the defending Cup champions. But at 4-2, I sat there in the seats last night, and I said, I'm going to come on the air tomorrow, and I'm going to talk about how even though they got beat and the point streak's over and everything else, I'm going to say, you know what? That wasn't the end of the world kind of game. Because even though they didn't have their A game, I thought they competed with a team that did have their A game. And then they fought back. They fought back. And if I've learned anything, if you've learned anything, if we've learned anything, it is you can never give up on this group. Not this team. I can't tell you about next year's team. This is not last year's team. This is not the team before that. This is not 2018. This is not 2017. This is not 2012. This is not 2011. This is not 2006. This team, you do not give up on. And last night was an example of that team, no matter what, never giving in. And it is all about one play here, one penalty there, one decision here, one puck battle there. And this team never, ever, ever throws in the towel. I remember they lost a couple weeks ago against John Hines, and what I thought was an incredibly gutsy call by a not-so-gutsy coach in John Hines. And they lost the game in overtime. And I remember how the Predators scored with the extra attacker right there before the end of regulation. And it was like, my God, this team, they never go away. This team, they never stop. This team is always. And that's what they did last night. They proved it again. Not all of these games, and I know that they've been winning on this winning streak, and they've only trailed for 15 minutes until last night. But the sign of a good team is a team that does not go away. And this team has proven to all of us that you can never, ever, ever count them out. And last night was a perfect example of that. And this is the best stretch of hockey I have ever seen from the Nashville Predators. And again, that includes the 2017 Cup Final and the 2018 President's Trophy. This is the best team I've ever seen because they're getting it across all four lines offensively. Jankowski last night, Ian, my guy.
This is a nice shot.
You know, well, I'll leave it at that. But Jankowski, I mean, that's my guy right there. And I'll tell you, he put one in there, got him on the board last night. But it's all four lines. The three defensemen, so everybody's making a play every night. And then, of course, it's the stars. And last night, you know, it was Forsberg who got the big goal to make it 4-3. And then it was Josi who ended up winning the game. And, of course, Saros was fabulous outside, I think, of the first 4 minutes of the game. And I don't even think a lot of that was his fault. This team's awesome. This team's incredible. This team is everything that we could ask for in a team. They could have easily packed it in last night at 3-0 or at 4-1 and said, you know, it was a nice point streak. It was great while it lasted. And, you know, Vegas is a good team, and they just came out tonight, and they outworked us at the beginning of the game, and we don't like it, but it's okay because we'll get on the plane, we'll go to Arizona, we'll right the wrongs. I mean, they went into the game last night with a 99.6% chance of making the playoffs, and now it's a 99.91% chance of making the playoffs. They were going to make the playoffs regardless of what happened last night. But this team doesn't do that. And this team is a perfect example of the group and the sum of the parts being the question. Outside of Josi, there's no question if you watch last night which team has more talent. Eichel and Hannafin, and it's not even close. But again, 4-2, third period, still time on the clock, and there's Jason Zucker, who was acquired for a 6th-round pick at the deadline. And there he is sacrificing his body to get that puck in front of the net. And there's Philip Forsberg once again, just like on Saturday, who just finds the right place, the right time, and pokes that puck right in the net. And all of a sudden, it's a game. And once it became a game in that building with that team, they weren't going to lose. Guys, what we're watching is special. And I've heard Bill Belichick say this all the time, and I've heard Peter Laviolette say this all the time, and I've heard all these old school coaches that have been doing it for forever, and they always talk about how every year's different. And about how fans, and I totally agree with this, fans want everything to pick up where it left off last year. There is no guarantee that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be good next year. Do I think they're going to be good? Yeah. Is there a guarantee? No. But there is something about special teams and what, riding the wave. And I heard Adam Vingan say today, all of the metrics, whether it's your traditional stats or your analytics gurus and everything, they're all saying this team is awesome. Everything this team is doing. It's not just, oh, this goalie is taking over, or, oh, Yossi's incredible, or, oh, this. And last night was a great example of that. And Barry Trotz said something a couple of weeks ago when this team was playing its way out of the funk. And he talked about how when he was trying to assess how good his team was before the trade deadline about buying and selling, he talked about how this team could not play poorly and still find a way to win. He said some teams, they can play their B game and they can still win. He said this team can't. And I agreed wholeheartedly with that opinion at that time because that's what we had seen. Well, last night, the Vegas Golden Knights, the defending Cup champions, that were for the most part intact and whole outside of Mark Stone, but injuries happen in the playoffs too. The Vegas Golden Knights, the defending Cup champions, with something to prove, played their A game, and they lost. You didn't play your A game. Not at the beginning. But the thing about the great teams, I'm not even talking about the good teams anymore. I'm talking about the great teams. The thing about the great teams is the great teams find a way. Over this 18-point or 18-game point streak, the Predators have lost twice. Once because John Hines pulled the goalie in one of the craziest and gutsiest decisions I've seen. And because the Predators had a goal taken off the board that was called for a high stick. A puck hit off a stanchion and went into the net. That's the thing about this club. If you beat them, everything has to go your way. That's because you're a great team. Guys, this is a Cup contender every which possible way. I couldn't go to sleep last night after the game because what I witnessed last night in person was the kind of performance that made me think this team might win the Cup. Like, I'm sorry, there is nothing more I need to see that this team can do it. This is a great team. And every night they just set the bar higher and higher and higher. And again, we're talking about a 4-1 third period deficit against the defending Cup champions that are trying to catch you in the standings, and you still won. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not selling tickets for the Nashville Predators. They have tons of people that do that. They do a good job of it. But if you're a fan and you're thinking, do I want to get in on this because I don't want to be left out of the playoffs like I was in 2017 or 2018, I'm telling you, this is a team you get behind right here. This is a special team. I could talk about this for 4 hours. And I guess that's how we're going to start. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. The play of the game last night. And again, you know, hockey's all about inch here, inch there, puck bounce here, puck bounce there. But the play of the game last night, I want to get to that, and, of course, your phones, and we will do that here on Stillman & Company, 615-737-1025, if you want to weigh in. Let's talk about Window Nation. That's right. Window Nation. I always tell you the truth here. If I think something's great, it's great. Window Nation's great. They came out to my home for the free in-home estimate. I'd had them check all of my windows. I said, guys, I want you to check all of my windows. I want you to tell me if I need them replaced, what kind of windows I need. I want to lower my energy costs. They went out, they inspected, they took a look at all my windows. They said, Jared, you don't need to upgrade your windows. Your windows are okay. And I thought to myself, what an honest company to sit there and have the opportunity to tell me, hey, we could replace this window and this window and this window and this window, and they didn't do it. And so that's how I know that if your energy costs are just out of control, especially how it's nice and sunny and warm one day and sunny and cold the next day and cold air's coming in, let Window Nation be the guys to take great care of your home. I promise you, they'll do a fabulous job because I know I can trust them because of my experience with them. So if your windows are cracked or leaking and they won't open or stay open, it's time to call the pros at Window Nation. Because right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. Plus, 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. With proven quality and service, it is no wonder why thousands have trusted Window Nation. Do not miss out. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com. Again, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. That's 866-90NATION, windownation.com.
Sent it in deep, left wing corner for Nashville. Forsberg tipped it, going in front. Patera goes down, the puck to the net. Predators are down 1. That was just sticking to it.
Vegas is challenged, but the play was offside.
Oh, here we go. Are they done? Looks like they're getting off the headset. Man, this is tough. And you can tell it was the 2 linesmen that have to, they're making the call and they're huddling up right now.
A lot of offside challenges are very quick reviews. This was not.
After review has determined that the play was onside, we have a good goal.
So an enormous play. It is indeed Forsberg's 40th goal of the year.
Golden Knights blocked it. Forsberg in front, off the chest of Patera. Now the shot to score! Nyquist ties it up! A power play goal!
I was pretty confident. I think from the angles I got, the views I got, I think it would be really hard to say it wasn't, or was offside. I thought it wasn't. So I think when those ones, and they take time, I think you feel that probably they're going to make the right decision.
I don't know about that one, Coach. I don't know. So I thought that play last night where, again, 8 minutes to go in the third period, you're down 4-2. And, again, I was sitting in my seat. I was happy with the way the Predators played last night, even if they had lost. And I'm like, 4-2, and the Predators put one in. And I'm like, oh, everybody, not so fast, my friend. I mean, they may be coming back in this one at 4-3. And then all of a sudden, I immediately saw Vegas go to challenge. And I was like, are they going to call goalie interference? Because, the goalie was on his back. And I'm like, are they going to call goalie interference? I thought Zucker got, kind of pushed into the net, and I didn't. And then all of a sudden they said offside, and I thought, oh, crap. Because nobody challenges offside anymore unless it's pretty obvious because of the penalty. And so the fact that Vegas immediately was like, offside, I thought, oh, God. And so they didn't show any of the replays in the building. They just sang let it be. And I'm texting Robbie, who's up in the press box where they've got the TVs like high above so they can see everything. And I'm like, is it a goal or not? And Robbie said he did not think that goal was going to stand. And so I was just awaiting this inevitable doom. It was about 3 minutes long of waiting for them to come back on the review. And I knew right then and there that was the game. I knew that if they said the goal stood with the Predators going on the power play, they were going to score and the roof was going to fly off the building. And it did. I also knew that if they took the goal off the board, that at 4-2 with 8 minutes to go, having taken a goal off the board, that's probably the game. And so I'm sitting here just waiting like, okay, here's the game. So I have a couple of thoughts here. First, though, I want to play kind of the analysis just because I find this to be funny. I want to play you the difference in the analysis between the Predators broadcast and between the Vegas broadcast. So here's Willie and Chris on the offside review on the Predators broadcast.
Vegas is challenged that the play was offside.
Oh, okay.
Now that's even more troublesome because I didn't think that was interference, Mace.
No,
I was hoping that was going to be the case, but
Willie knows.
Offside, you always worry.
Yep. And that was, it didn't take long, so we'll see. There's Zucker right there. We're going to see where that puck is. Okay. This is tough. Yeah, it looks like he's going to get in. It's hard to see with the frames. That's tough to tell with the
frame by frame. Have to slow it down a little bit more.
But it looks like it.
Well, these days, when you challenge offside, you're pretty sure. You don't see a missed offside challenge very often. And we'll have to have a better look than that if we're going to make an assessment up here.
It looks like it, from where they were to that frame, the frame where you saw the puck and Zucker over the line, it looked like he could be offside, so. Oh man,
it's very
It is
close.
so close. We just saw.
I think your best hope here, Mace, is that it is inconclusive. That is the only hope because it's very close. Okay,
right here. Let's see.
This is a better look. This is very close.
Still, it looks. But is it? Is it as? That is tough.
I mean,
it looks like his back. Look at the back of the blade. It's off the ice there, but is it over?
It looks like it's going to be offside, but you're not sure.
I think it's the legs.
They both go across.
But look at the plane, his jersey. I don't know if it's the legs or the skates have to be onside, but his butt and his jersey are over the line there. Man, that is close.
So you hear right there, like, oh God, oh my goodness, oh. Not sure about that. Now here was the Vegas call the Vegas analysis of the offside.
Vegas is challenged that the play was offside.
So not crashing the net, offside.
That's what I was wondering. Dave Rogowski is so good at catching that video, coach. Couldn't get the puck out. And here's a look Well, that's tough to tell, that one. I don't know if on the far side of the ice if it was
Zucker that was ahead of the play with Yossi carrying it in. You think about how close Shane the other night, the game against Seattle.
That one right there looks like it's offside. Right there. They've got to catch the frame, but they are so close. And this is another close one. The puck has to completely... Well, that looks like offside right there. That frame. That is... So you take it back right there. Stop. I know it's hard.
It's like you need like a quarter frame.
You do, but there is, if you stop at the right spot, I think the other angle will show that one might have too. There's the look right there where it's offside. This is the one up top, that right there. The puck is not over there, and then he is ahead of the play, but you can tell by the amount of time they're taking looking at this, the linesman, that how close it really is.
By the way, when one broadcast says Mace, I think we have to hope that it's inconclusive, and the other broadcast is like, I think it's offside, chances are it's probably offside. So I have some thoughts on this. Number one, I think it was probably offside. But what I do not like is I do not like in replay, like, did 1 millimeter of that skate cross over that blue line, before that 1 millimeter of that puck? That's not what replay's for. Replay is for a couple of weeks ago when the Buffalo Sabres were in town and Cody Glass got sent to the box for high sticking, and they replayed it and saw that it was the Buffalo guy that high sticked the other Buffalo guy in the face. That's what replay is for. Replay is for when a guy doesn't catch the ball and it hits the turf, that we say incomplete as opposed to the guy caught it. It's not for that stuff. And so, that drives me crazy. My first thought, though, is it was probably offside, but it was so bang-bang, I'm not upset about the call going the Predators' way. My second thought is, what a terrible challenge last night by Bruce Cassidy. You have got to understand the game if you're Cassidy. And I know Cassidy's got, his video coach is the guy who's saying, Coach, challenge the call. But, Cassidy, at this point, you are now putting the game in the hands of the replay official. Like, that's what you're doing, is you are now putting the win or the loss in the hands of Toronto, because if they take that goal off the board, you're going to win. And if they end up keeping it there, you get charged with the delay of game. And I knew the Predators were going to score on that power play. Like, I knew they were going to score. And then I think the other thing is that I think we all have to realize that these are the kind of decisions that are the difference between you getting bounced in the second round and you winning the cup. Like, that's the line between winning the Stanley Cup and losing game 5 of a second round series that all of a sudden just burns you. A penalty call, was it 1 millimeter of skate and one? Because let's not forget about what happened in game 1 of that 2017 Cup final, when PK Subban scored, and it was one, and I've seen that replay 5,000 times of game 1 in the Cup final, and I'm still not convinced that you could tell Forsberg was offside. But that was the game last night. And last night, you give the Predators an inch and they'll take a mile. We'll get to your phones next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Stillman and Company. The Predators, apparently, they just don't lose anymore. Tomorrow, it'll be your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you will win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow morning at 8:45 a.m. Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes at Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ Anderson to get your home seen, heard, and sold.
There's a lot of belief. There's a lot of confidence in this room. I think, like I said before, there's a lot of trust in our game. We trust ourselves that we can play a really good game, and we're not going to have it every night. But I think we showed especially the last couple of games, and there was times when we maybe didn't have it as much, but we found a way to get it back, and that was the same thing tonight. And I think that's a sign of a really good team.
That is the sign of a really good team. I mean, when the Predators came back against Minnesota and tied the game with the extra attacker, I said, that's what good teams do. When I sat in my seats last night, and I'm going to say this, I thought the Predators were getting back in the game at 3-1 when Jankowski scored, and then I thought they got screwed by the refs on the fourth goal for Vegas because I thought Lauzon got held.
Holding the stick, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that should have been a penalty. He was right in front of me, and I saw Lauzon. Oh, my God, you should have seen his anger with the official. Oh, my goodness. And so, again, that's what great teams do. Roman Yossi's not wrong. And there should be a lot of belief because they beat everybody. They beat good teams. They beat bad teams. It's like Ian and I were talking during the break about the Colorado game on Saturday. Colorado has not lost since, I believe it was March 2nd. They came in here.
I believe that is correct. Yeah.
And they haven't lost since then. They got rid of Ryan Johansson, and they have not lost since then. And Ian said, they're beating playoff teams and they're crushing bad teams. I said, well, you know who else is beating playoff teams and crushing bad teams? You. Let's go to your phones as promised, which are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Texture says, after last night's game, I will never give up on the Predators again, the texture says. I am a season ticket holder, and I thought last night, well, they're a good team, and I guess we're just going to have to lose this game. What did they do? They came back and win. Again, that's what great teams do. Like, that's what I know, because we around here have had our hearts broken so many times that it's almost like we're afraid to expect what the great teams do. Right now, this stretch of hockey is the best, just the way that this team is playing like every night, and that they're not reliant on the goaltender like they were in the 2017 Cup run, or they're not top heavy with a bunch of guys that are just kind of along for the ride like in 2018. This team is freaking awesome. This is the best I've ever seen them. I'm serious. Texture says, I love the Predators, love the energy, and love what they're doing. But as a Pittsburgh transplant living in Nashville, I'll always be a Penguins fan first, Pred second. Forsberg was offside in Game 1 of the 17 Cup Series. Ian, do you believe that Forsberg was offside in Game 1 of the 17 Cup Series?
We never saw a conclusive angle on that, but I mean, if they called him offside, I believe they probably saw some
I thought it was bullcrap. Now, I'll say this. I love the fact that now you get penalized for that. And I think that's why they put the rule in I think that Game 1 of the Cup final is why they put that rule in, because it's not enough of a detriment to lose the timeout. And so instead of you better be sure when you're challenging, they would not have challenged that. Sullivan does not challenge that in Game 1 of the Cup final if they're down 1-0 and then it puts them on the penalty kill. You're not going to do that. And so I thought last night, that's why I thought it was such a dumb decision by Bruce Cassidy to challenge. And I think Cassidy's a good coach, but that's why I thought it was so dumb.
Well, that's why when Willie said that in the broadcast, you usually don't see teams lose an offside challenge because they are almost, 100% sure it's offside before they throw that challenge flag on that.
Think about it in football. How often do you see a team lose an incomplete pass? A completed pass, incomplete pass on a challenge. Every now and then a team will run up to the line of scrimmage and they'll be on defense and the coach will throw the flag. But as far as, where we get a good look at it, you can pretty much tell if the ball was caught or not. And I think it's the same with offside. So normally when Cassidy's told, hey, challenge, Cassidy probably thinks it's a slam dunk. But you can't have that. Reese from Greenbrier says, I saw Vegas fans all over Twitter complaining about the offside call being the reason the Predators won, which is simply not the case. You cannot blow a 3-goal lead twice and turn the puck over in overtime. Complain about the refs, and Lauzon was so clearly held on Vegas' fourth goal. Here's the thing, guys. The refs are a part of the game. Again, these are playoff battles. Last night's game felt like a playoff game. The way Vegas came out skating, and the energy they had, these are playoff games. And in the playoffs, you can lose, based off of something like that. Again, like the Cup final in 17 with Forsberg in the offside call, which I think is still bullcrap, and I still don't understand how they came up with some idea that he was, and I'll never forget about it. Bruins fan texts in and says, Preds fans better be ready for us obnoxious Boston fans. Love seeing the Preds kick tush. Look forward to next Tuesday. I will be there on Tuesday, and that'll be another one of those measuring stick games because Boston looks every bit like a cup contender. You know what's crazy about Vegas? I thought last night, the way that I saw Vegas skating up and down the ice, I mean, they were flying. And the way I saw them skating up and down the ice reminded me of Boston last year. Now, some of that might be because the coach came from Boston, but, I mean, those guys are so fast. It is unbelievable how fast they were last night. One texter says that the game took a turn when Greg Sankey was shown on the Jumbotron. Ian, did you see that?
No.
So last night, I'm sitting in the seats at the game.
I saw Jeff Fisher was there. But...
So they showed Jeff Fisher on the Jumbotron, and the fans clapped. I was not one of them. But the fans clapped when they showed Jeff Fisher. So later in the game, probably when it was 4-1 maybe was when they did it during a timeout, they showed Greg Sankey on the Jumbotron, and the fans booed. And I think this probably has to do with his NCAA tournament comments. Greg Sankey recently came out and basically said, well, we should get more SEC teams in and kick out the Cinderellas. And everyone's like, no, you got enough teams in the tournament. And so they showed Sankey and they booed. And Sean Henry was sitting next to Sankey, and you could see when they booed, like Sean Henry was like, oh, no, you're fine. It's they show Sankey on the board. Sankey kind of puts his hand up in the air, and then it's like, boo! And Sankey's like, oh, great. You could tell. It was kind of like when I got booed on the Jumbotron.
Seems a bit harsh.
Comes with the territory,
Oh, just a correction. Colorado lost last night to Montreal. So that
Montreal?
2-1. So that was Colorado's first loss was last night since the Preds beat them in early March.
Think about this. Montreal is one of the crappiest teams in the league. And they've beaten both you and Colorado.
So it's trap games. Yep.
I mean, goodness gracious. Texter says at the game last night, Preds fans next to us left after the Golden Knights went up 4-1. But honestly, I didn't see many others leaving, which was amazing to see. You can tell the fans now believe that they have a chance. Let me say this. The Stillman group last night, we did have the conversation, Ian.
Yeah.
We had the conversation of, around the start of the third period, it was like, hey, if we want to go, like, no one's going to be upset if we leave. Like, it's going to be okay. Like,
good thing you guys decided to stay.
We did stay. Neely says, why did the Preds line up for the referee after the game last night? It was right in front of me. I'm guessing the referee was retiring.
Yes, he is. It was a linesman.
Do we know who it is? One of our famous guys like Wes McCauley?
No, he is a ref. Wes McCauley is a ref. This was a lines person. I don't know his name.
I know Wes McCauley, and then there's a Kevin O something, Kevin O Sullivan, Kevin O Sampson, Kevin O something. I don't know. Wes McCauley's the only referee I know. He refs every game. All right, Chris Sanders to join us next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number here on the program. We get this whole rebuild talk and everything else. We'll be joined by Chris. We'll get his thoughts on the Titans, Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. So I'm making it official. I am unsubscribing to notifications from Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, and Tom Pelissero.
It's about time.
Well, I set myself to the notifications on those guys when free agency started, and that's what led to our massive 5-minute meltdown and then excitement roller coaster with Mason Rudolph and Calvin Ridley signing because I get the notification pops up on my iPad. But I've got about 15 notifications in the last segment about Jadeveon Clowney signing with the Panthers. Who gives a rat's ass about Clowney or the Panthers? They're a perfect fit. He'll go to a team that throws money away like there's no tomorrow, and I just can't get notifications about it because I don't care. Chris Sanders joins us now on the program, former Titans receiver. So, Chris, I want to start with this with you, which is this.
Sure.
The Titans, for the most part, free agency is over. They could still add a guy here, add a guy there, and it's not that those moves are not consequential because they are, but again, kind of the real money is gone. And now it's about the draft. But the Titans, in my opinion, have too many holes when it comes to the draft when they've only got 2 picks in the top 100. So between left tackle, right tackle, inside backer, Danico Autry's replacement with 11.5 sacks, safety, etc., how worried are you that the Titans are not going to fill those holes?
I mean, they're not going to be able to fill all the holes, but I still think, everybody's talking about Will Levis needs to play well this year, but for him to play well, you still got to have an offensive line. I know they got Christian Berry at the center position, but we've been talking about this the last 3 or 4 years that they got to get a left tackle, and I think that you have to go a left tackle. And some of the guys at left tackle we've been talking about the whole time was it Joe Alt, from Notre Dame. You got Mims from Georgia, you got Latham from Alabama. So, even though they got a whole bunch of holes that they need to fill, they definitely need to fill this hole because you got to protect your quarterback.
Chris, you've done this before. You know the business of the NFL. So, L'Jarius Sneed, they agreed to a trade Friday night, and now it's Wednesday, and there still has not been an official announcement. And you know as well as I do what the holdup on something like that usually is, right?
Yeah, it is. I don't know if he passed the physical. I'm not saying
Bingo. So my question to you is, what's your level of concern on the knees?
Ooh, I mean, don't when they say it happened, it should actually happen the next day and sign and get it out the way. So if there's a holdup, there's something that's holding it up. So if it's an injury or something that they saw, I just hope that it doesn't come out that it gets reneged. But at the end of the day, if there's a holdup, there's something wrong, maybe with the physical or something wrong with the contract.
So what I think's happening here, it was reported yesterday, $20 million signing bonus. Ooh. I think what's happening is I think the Titans and Sneed are negotiating the language of years 2 and 3. It's a 4-year deal, but with $55 million guaranteed, it's pretty much a 3-year deal with a 4th option. Mm-hmm. And I think what's happening is with the $20 million signing bonus, the Titans are probably telling Sneed, you're going to get paid up front, but we want protections for year 2 and 3. And that's probably the language of that is getting worked out. But that takes me back to the knees themselves. How much of a concern is it for you that clearly the league was skeptical of Sneed's knees, given the draft pick that he went up with, and the fact that the Titans have not officially made this deal official yet?
I mean, that's a scary situation. And I think that's a great observation of what you're saying because it makes you think that if we're going to give you all this money, I think, was it 50 or 55 million guaranteed? I mean, when you're investing in a player like that, when you're investing, you got to make sure he's available because you can make all this money and not be available, and then it can be a waste. So, I don't know if it's a contract. I don't know if it's because of his needs, but at the end of the day, you better make sure that everything is worked out with the contract, but also physically that he can be on the field, Jared.
Former Titans receiver Chris Sanders is our guest. So there was a mock draft yesterday at ESPN that came out, which had the Titans taking J.C. Latham at 7 over Marvin Harrison Jr.
Oh.
What I want to know, as a receiver,
my God,
are the Titans, because of the lack of both tackle positions, are the Titans forced to wear
Absolutely, you got to get him. But at the end of the day, I think that with them signing Calvin, really, it makes the decision even easier because now you got your top-notch receiver. I'm not saying Howard wasn't a great wide receiver. He still is. But at the end of the day, you got to have some protection. We can talk about having the skill players all day. You can have Jerry Rice on one side, Randy Moss on the other side. But if you don't protect your quarterback, he's going to continuously get hit in the face. And if you look at last year, what was the Achilles heels of the Tennessee Titans? It was the offensive line. They gave up 60 sacks last year. So you got to make sure that you get somebody that protects Will Levis.
Okay, so you're telling me that you would pass on Marvin Harrison Jr. if he was available at 7 and Joe Alt was off the board?
Yes, and the reason why I say yes on that situation is because they got Calvin Ridley. Now, If they didn't get Calvin Ridley, then now my thinking changes up a little more to where, you know what, I can get an offensive line later on in the draft. You just can't pass on a Marvin Harrison if he's sitting there. But I think the decision is easier is because you got Calvin Ridley that's just as good as Marvin Harrison or even better.
He's not as good as Marvin Harrison, is he?
He's better. Right now he's better than Marvin Harrison.
But I'm talking about, like, what he's going to be.
Oh, yeah, I mean, Harrison's going to be the dude, but at the end of the day, I just think that with them getting Calvin Ridley, it makes the decision a little easier.
How concerned are you that the Titans have not replaced Nico Autry's consistency and production?
Oh, my God. I mean, you are concerned because when you talk about a guy that comes in there and does his job, I mean, he does it, great each and every weekend. And when you talk about a guy being consistent from game 1 to game 17, that's what they're going to miss. If you look at how many sacks he had, he made 12 sacks last year. And the thing about this is not just 12 sacks. He was an impact player. So I think the Tennessee Titans need to figure out somebody to come in there to take his place. Because at the end of the day, when you have an impact player and you lose him, you better bring somebody in there to make sure he comes in to make plays.
So, by the way, TD just texted me and said, no, with a bunch of exclamation points, you don't pass on Marvin Harrison Jr.
No, absolutely not.
You just said you would.
No. I said it will be easier if they get because they got Calvin Ridley. That's what I'm saying. Now, if they didn't have Calvin Ridley, then that's a no-brainer. I go with Marvin Harrison because he's a generational player. I mean, he's the guy. But why would you get Calvin Ridley and Marvin Harrison on the same team when you don't have a left tackle? That's kind of what I'm saying. I'm not saying you don't just pass on him. And TD is absolutely right. You don't pass on that guy. But the reason why I say you pass on him now is because you got Calvin Ridley on the other side. That's all I'm saying.
What were you going to say, Ian? Oh, never mind. So, I do have a thought for you, Chris Sanders,
Sure.
which is this. Do you think the Titans are in a rebuild right now, or do you think they're going for it with the moves that they have made, with Sneed and Awuzie and Ridley and Cushenberry?
Dude, they are going for it. I mean, everybody's talking about it's a rebuild situation, and you lost a lot of players. But look at the guys that they got. Tony Pollard, a great running back. You got Sneed, Awuzie, you got Cushenberry, you got Kenneth Murray. You got all these guys that you brought in, guys that can play. Because when you're a real rebuilding year, you just said, okay, we're just going to throw this year away. That's not how Rand Carthon and this organization is looking at it. Because the thing about it is, when you have a situation that you had last year where it was a bad season overall, you're 5-12 and all that, it ain't no rebuilding season because the fans want to win now. And look at the players that they got. The players that they got are showing the fans that we got to win now. This is not a rebuilding situation.
How early in the process, now that we know that Ridley's going to be a part of this, now that it seems like it's going to be Ridley, Burks, Hopkins, Phillips, Okonkwo, Spears, Pollard, Wiley, those guys. They may add a receiver in the draft, but we have a pretty good – Nick Westbrook-Akine. We have a pretty good idea.
Sure.
When should Will Levis get this group together and start working out with them?
Like, absolutely now. I mean, even if you don't do a lot of stuff on the field. I mean, because you got to remember it's a long, grueling season. You don't want to run routes each and every day. But I just think on the mental side, being on the same page mentally, looking at film and just kind of getting, guys adjusted and get to know each other. Because the thing about it is you can have a great room of wide receivers. You can have a great room of quarterbacks. But if they're not in sync, if they're not in camaraderie, then it's not going to work. So the thing that I would do is just maybe call those guys up and maybe have a walkthrough, maybe throw some routes a little bit, but just mentally all been on the same page. Talk about defenses. Talk about, beating a defensive back off the spot and where am I throwing the ball in a spot. So when you have situations like that where they're mentally good, then all of a sudden they get on the field, they're all on the same page.
What if I were to say to you, well, they've been texting each other?
What? I mean, you can text each other. You can text a lot of things. It's like this. I married my wife, Faye, she's beautiful. But if I just text her all day and didn't spend time with her, she's not going to like me. That's kind of like the same situation with this. If I'm just texting you, that's great, it's great communication. But I got to see you physically. I got to physically see you walk through a route. I got to physically see you run a route so I can know what you like and where I know you need to put the ball. We can text all day, and that's great. But at the end of the day, if you're on the same page, you got to do it texting-wise, film-wise, and on the film-wise. And I think that if they can do that, it can work.
Chris Sanders, as always, on our program. Chris, great stuff.
Appreciate you, bro. Love you, man.
Love you, too. No, I'm surprised you shout out. Of course, I'm not surprised at all Chris found a way to shout out and flex on his beautiful wife. That is something that Chris Sanders loves to do. Coming up next, there is something I am incredibly skeptical about. I mean, incredibly. and you should be too. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune into 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. This week for NCAA tournament coverage brought to you by Toyota. Ready, set, go get your Toyota today at Toyota.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So I have said, and I have defended myself many a time, when people get mad at me about criticizing Rand Carthon, and I've said it is not personal. It is personnel. And then people get oh no, Jared, it's personal. They totally leave out the fact that I was all over Mike Vrabel's tush last year. And so sometimes I'm like, well, what can I do? Now, so far, I've liked pretty much everything I've heard from Brian Callahan. Except this morning, I was listening to Robbie and Rexroad, and Paul Kaharski, who was back from the owners' meetings, recapped his conversation and takeaways of a conversation with Brian Callahan. And I got to tell you, I'm not very happy about the personnel. Play the cut.
What stood out to you about that conversation with the new Titans head coach?
Well, I talked, his conversation went to the positions where they have not addressed things. I think it's pretty clear that he is expecting that they will draft an inside linebacker to go with Kenneth Murray, which is definitely a necessity. Talked to him about the lack of edge players, and he pumped up Landry and Key, of course, but he did not mention the other guys by name. So I don't think that bodes very well for Rashad Weaver or Caleb Murphy. Safety, they've talked to Justin Simmons and had Marcus May in for a visit. He talked maybe about the market downshifting eventually. So I would think those guys could still be in play. And there's not a lot of action going on with them. And he said Dylan Radins is a guard right now for them. So Jalen Duncan.
He keeps saying that.
And Nicholas Petit-Frere are the right tackle competitors right now. And the right tackle could be one of those guys. He said there's potential for them to add a veteran option at some point, but didn't make it sound like it's a pressing thing.
Okay, so they're going to draft an inside linebacker, a green dot inside linebacker. They feel good about their edge players with Arden Key and Harold Landry, and no need to upgrade there, I guess. And that it's going to be Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT
and JD, Jalen Duncan, battling it out for the right tackle spot. I don't like that one bit. I don't like any of that. So how does that make you feel? Because yesterday, Trevor Maddich was on our program, and I asked him about these things. So let's start with the green dot inside linebacker. Again, the whole point of the green dot is you're the one who is calling the defense. You are the one that is telling the defensive line what to do and telling the secondary what to do. And again, on defense, it's 11 guys working together. So are we going to take a guy right out of college that you draft in maybe the second round or the fourth round with a, sub 100 pick, and you're going to say, all right, man, you're wearing the green dot at inside linebacker? Brian Callahan tells PK the answer to that is yes. Here's what Trevor said yesterday.
Jared, I'd like to see them sign somebody with experience for that very reason, even if that guy isn't the most athletic or the most talented, because defenses have to play together. They have to line up right, and that guy with the green dot is in charge of making sure that that front seven gets lined up right and making sure that whoever the bell cow of the secondary is, make sure that those DBs behind him get lined up right.
Okay, what about the right tackle position? And I am going to have to tell this story here in a second, but Jalen Duncan and Nicholas Petit-Frere, Trevor, do you think those guys can do it?
I do not think that Coach Callahan actually believes that Jalen Duncan can play right tackle in this league. I also think that he probably is a little worried about Nicholas Petit-Frere, although I do believe that he could be coached into a position where he can be an adequate right tackle. That's Petit-Frere.
Oh, no. And when he says, I don't believe that Coach Callahan thinks that Jalen Duncan can play right tackle in this league, that's Trevor saying, Jalen Duncan cannot play right tackle in this league. Just like he told you at the start of 2022 in training camp, he said, Dylan Radins, it took him one preseason game against the Ravens before Trevor said, right then and there, Radins can't do this. Well, I remember Joe Rexroad. Oh, well, Trevor's not the end-all, be-all. One game. It took him one preseason game. So I don't know how it makes you feel, but it makes me very, very, very nervous. Because I see this now with this Titan team. It doesn't matter who the GM is. It doesn't matter who the coach is, apparently. But every offseason, a team, and it seems like the Titans are the ones that are doing this, but a team does something that if we had games to play, like we had all these extra games, fine. You want to see if Nicholas Petit-Frere, if this were Major League Baseball, and you wanted to see if Nicholas Petit-Frere, you went into spring training saying, let's see if he can play right tackle. Well, you're going to get 30 games worth of at-bats in spring training, and then you can probably waste the first 50 games trying to figure out if he can play right tackle or not. And then if so, like, oh, yeah, we'll just trade for a right tackle, or, oh, we'll just, call somebody up from AAA, or, oh, this ain't baseball. Like, these decisions get made now. And so I'm going to tell the right tackle story, because years ago, when I first started working here, I did a show on a Friday. George Plaster was out. Willie was, I think, traveling with the Predators during the playoffs. And so I got called up from the mid-morning spot to do the afternoons with the great Floyd Reese. I had known Floyd for a week. I had never worked with him. Sitting there just making small talk. And I said, this was 2015. I said, Floyd, the Titans going to be any good this year? And he looked at me and he said, we don't have a right tackle. And I said, that's pretty important, huh? He said, right tackle? Translation, you can't fudge it at right tackle. If you are really going to go into the season with PT and JD at right tackle, and Trevor's telling you right now, I mean, good luck. You're going to find yourself in the exact same position you found yourself over the last couple of years. This is the same thing that got the other guys fired. And I'm sitting here thinking that Brian Callahan probably doesn't understand, because he didn't live through this like we did, that this idea of, oh, we'll just go get that in the draft, or, oh, we'll just coach him up. See, he didn't live through Aaron Brewer. And when you've got Joe Burrow, you can overcome some of that stuff because you've got Joe Burrow. Well, Will Levis is not Joe Burrow. And so, I think Brian Callahan's probably sitting there looking at JD and PT and this fourth-round Scarbini State linebacker that they're going to stick a green dot on his helmet, and he's like, we'll coach him up. And I'm like, dude, let me tell you the story of Aaron Brewer. Dude, let me tell you the story of right tackle in 2022 for the Titans. Dude, let me tell you how Jack Gibbons ended up starting at linebacker last year. It's the same thing over and over and over again. So, great, you spent some money on some players. You don't have a right tackle. And when, again, Brian Callahan, and it sounds like Paul walked away from that conversation thinking to himself, they're not, when he said, yeah, we could draft a tackle or we could add a tackle, talking about the right tackle, it was almost like, oh, yeah, we could do that if we want, but no. We're going to roll with these guys. What? No, that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. You cannot do what got the last guys fired, or else guess what's going to happen to you? And so you guys can say, oh, you just get mad at Rand Carthon because you don't like Rand Carthon, Jared. Well, I'm mad at Brian Callahan now, because if Brian Callahan thinks that he can coach up crap bum players and turn them into legitimate NFL starters, I got something that he's going to see in the fall that he's not going to like, and neither are you. Because you cannot take bad players and make them good. You can't do it. This is the NFL. You cannot just assume that you can take a guy who's been bad his entire career and make him good. And when Brian Callahan says we're going to stick PT and JD at right tackle and see what happens, that is no different to me than John Robinson letting David Quessenberry go in free agency because we're going to let Radence and Petit-Frere battle it out at right tackle. What that means is you don't have a right tackle. Are you going to be any good this year? We don't have a right tackle. Translation, I don't care about anything else. You're not going to be good if you don't have a right tackle. That's pretty important, huh? Right tackle? And guess what? I told Brian Callahan that the day he got hired because you've got to have a right tackle. But nope. He's like all these other guys. He's such a good coach. I'll show you guys. I'm going to take Scarbini after Scarbini, and I'm going to turn him into Joe Burrow. Ay. Oh, my God. And I didn't even get to the part where PK said that he brought up Arden Key when it came to edge rushing. 6 sacks. Guess what? Arden Key got most of those in the first game because he went up against that bum from the Saints. I mean, after that, where was Arden Key last year? I mean, we were told, and again, this is another example of the coach thinking, oh, no, I'll show you. Last year, Vrabel, when Andre Dillard was getting beat on every rep in training camp, was like, well, that's Arden Key. I mean, come on now. What do you expect? Like, that's Arden Key. Arden Key is a great player in this league. He had 6 sacks last year. And that's what I'm banking on? So, I mean, look, I liked Brian Callahan when he got hired. I think the resume checked out. And again, you don't get in trouble for something you haven't done yet. But if you have made it known to Paul that you think you're going to get that green dot inside backer in the draft, that you think you're fine with a defensive front of Simmons, Key, Landry, and Sebastian Joseph, and that you can get by with Nicholas Petit-Frere and Jalen Duncan at right tackle, I mean, you are going to be disappointed. I don't care how much money you spend at running back. 615-737-1025. We'll get your thoughts in on this. Plus, Brian Callahan says they had a plan in free agency. Do we think he's actually telling you the truth, or is this more Mike Vrabel kind of, just bull crapping, and now we're going to have to parse every line of every phrase? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, hey, did your bracket get busted? Well, we have another chance for you to win with 1025 The Game 16-Team Bracket Challenge. Go to theGameNashville.com/bracket challenge and fill out your 16-team bracket to compete and win great prizes, including tickets to see Kings of Leon at Bridgestone Arena on September 26th. The 1025 The Game Bracket Challenge brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Twin Peaks, and Volunteer Hose and Gasket. So, one thing that I've realized about myself is that I feel disrespected when somebody tells me something that is so easily disputable, because it makes me feel like that person doesn't value my intelligence at all whatsoever. And it's like, look, man, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm not stupid either. And that was, I think, one of the problems with Mike Vrabel is Mike Vrabel thought that he was smarter than everybody else, and so he treated everybody like, I'll say whatever bullcrap out there, and you should believe it because I played. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Mike, but your special teams stink. Why won't you fire the special teams coach? And he was like, I played. And we saw how far that got him. So Brian Callahan, and again, Brian Callahan's got a clean slate with me. But at the same time, I don't like being bullcrapped. And he was on with, I believe this was Kevin Clark at ESPN at the owners' meetings, and they were talking about the moves the Titans made in free agency, and Brian Callahan says they have a plan.
We put together a really, I think, targeted free agency plan. Obviously, we didn't get everybody we had targeted, but we were very specific on the positions that we were trying to target, where we would allocate the money, obviously the positions of premium that you need in the NFL these days. And we just felt like we wanted to improve the defense as best we could through free agency. And then obviously you had the draft part, so you're kind of working both pieces as you're setting the free agency plan. And I thought we did a really good job of having a plan and having it targeted and then being able to pivot when it was time to pivot.
Okay, we had a plan, and we pivoted when it was time to pivot, but we had a plan, and we focused on the premium positions, and who's playing right tackle? Need I mind you that the first free agent signing the Titans made was an $8 million a year running back? I don't have a hard time with the idea of the Titans saying, hey, man, we needed good players. So we went out and we bought good players. I don't have a problem with the fact that Kaharski said this morning that Chad Brinker threw John Robinson under the bus saying, look, our drafts have been bad. I don't have a problem with that. Now, I wonder if Chad is man enough when things don't go well with his own drafts to say the same thing, but that's a different discussion for a different day. But I don't have a problem with admitting that the drafts lately with Farley and Radens and Isaiah Wilson and Fulton, I don't have a problem saying that those drafts are bad. No problem with that. But again, if you had a plan and you're bragging about your plan, I have a hard time with that. Especially when you already admitted in another interview that Calvin Ridley was only because other plans that you had fell through, so you had all this money and you turned around and you gave it to him. Well, that means that wasn't the plan. And if it is the plan, if the plan was what got executed for the most part, that means you went into free agency thinking you weren't going to go get a tackle? Not one tackle? Not even a backup tackle? Not even a swing tackle? Not even a Dennis Kelly-like tackle? See, what I think the truth is that I think they probably figured they were going to go get Lloyd Cushenberry, and they were probably going to go get a more dynamic running back, and they did. They were going to spend in the secondary, and they did. But you can't brag about the plan when you walked out of free agency without a green dot inside backer, the Danico Autry consistent, productive defensive lineman, and you still don't have two tackles. You can't brag about the plan. It almost feels like I'm being lied to. We had a great plan. You had a great plan. You just told me you signed Calvin Ridley because the plan didn't work out, and you had the money from the plan not working out to be able to sign Calvin Ridley. So again, a word of advice. I don't mind Brian Callahan being honest and saying, hey, we had some targets and we didn't hit on them, but we feel like X, Y, Z. And then if I disagree with it, I disagree with it. But don't try to pass me on some bull crap like, oh, we have this grand plan and it worked. Your grand plan does not include a tackle. And Jalen Duncan might be starting there. A guy who allowed 9 sacks last year on 300 snaps. I don't know how I feel about that. Kyle is up next. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kyle, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared. I'm with you. The tackle situation is serious. Of course, I would love to get Joe Alt at 7, but what would you think about getting a right tackle like Patrick Paul, or I know TD's been pretty high on Blake Fisher, the other tackle at Notre Dame. I wouldn't have any problems going bang, bang, just tackle, got protection. There you go. What do you think about tackle?
So, I mean, it would make me nervous to have 2 rookie tackles. I don't think it's the end of the world if you do that, and I appreciate your call, Kyle. The thing is again, that's fine, but you only have 2 picks in the top 100. So if you go tackle, not only do they both have to start right away, but now, as far as all the other potential, the Danico Autry replacement, you're not getting that. So now Danico's 11.5 sacks have walked out of the building, and you haven't replaced it. And your green dot inside backer. Like, I understand that guys like Puka Nacua exist, that get drafted, and they're better than everybody thinks, and they're good players right away. I get it. But that's the exception, not the rule. The rule is you can draft a guy in the first, second, maybe third round, depending upon the position, and you can expect him to be a contributor. You can't take a guy in the 6th round and say, that's going to be our starting guard. You can't do that. That's what bad teams do. And, I mean, again, like if you go tackle, now who's your inside backer? Who's your replacement for Danico? And I'm not complaining about safety because I think they'll sign one, but they need a safety too. 615-737-1025. We're to your phones next. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Okay, I've got a question for you. I know you've been in job interview mode here for the last few months.
Yeah.
I want the unfiltered truth from you.
All right. I can give that to you.
Nothing crazy, but I don't get to talk to a lot of guys that might be drafted in the top 10.
Yeah.
Like, I followed the draft my whole life as a kid. You look who's going where.
Yeah.
There's a whole industry around following the draft. You're one of the names that gets thrown around in the top 10. Are you going on sites in the morning and seeing where is Joe Alt going to go? Who should take Joe Alt? Like, are you tracking it or are you staying away from it?
My mom definitely is. My mom is telling me something new every day on that. She's following my name on Twitter. I'm like, Mom, I can't tell you anything. Like, there could be a trade 2 minutes before I get drafted. There could be a trade today. Like, I can't tell you where I'm going. So, like, I feel like if you really kind of invest in that stuff, you can get distracted. So I've really stayed away from it. Like, when the time comes and I get picked, that's where I know I'm going. But from here till now, I just got to continue to work, and whatever happens, happens.
But Mom has you covered.
Oh, Mom's got me covered. Yeah. She's reading Twitter. She's getting mad at people sending articles. I'm like, Mom, you know that's just a random person in his basement, right?
There you go, Joe Alt. How do you not love that guy? One texter says, I feel like you're swapping the we need a left tackle with we need a right tackle, Jared, now that it seems like Joe Alt is a lock to the Titans. Well, I'm not complaining about left tackle because I think the Titans are going to draft a left tackle. But guess what? Ian, has the right tackle story ever been the left tackle story?
No, I don't think so.
It's been the right tackle story from day one. And I think, like, everybody knows you have to have a left tackle. I think everybody knows you have to have a quarterback, you have to have a left tackle, you have to have a defense, you have to have a coach, those things. Right? Like, if, again, the story is I asked Florida, the Titans going to be any good? So we don't have a right tackle. If you said to somebody, are the Seahawks going to be any good this year? We don't have a quarterback. Probably not going to be very good. You know that. The point is that the old man thinks that right tackle is so important that unlike other positions, like, again, the second safety spot to Amani Hooker. Now, I'm nervous about Hooker because he gets hurt and probably makes a little bit too much money as far as the market is concerned. But I do feel like, safety, fine, whatever, you can fudge it. Running back, you can kind of fudge it. You can take a guy in the 4th round and he can play running back. Like, it won't be the end of the world. But you can't fudge it at right tackle. And so when you're sitting here saying things like, you're just trying to be mad because of that. No. I'm mad because I told Brian Callahan when he got hired, like, dude, you need a right tackle. And instead, Brian Callahan is, again, intimating to Paul Kaharski that it is going to be Nicholas Petit-Frere or Jalen Duncan. One texter says, what happened to waiting until somebody does something before you get mad at them? He said it. He told Paul, again, I don't want to misquote anybody. I don't want to misquote Paul here. But it sounds like the conversation Paul had with Brian Callahan makes Paul think that the Titans do not view upgrading at right tackle as a priority. That happened. He said it. And I am mad about that idea. So if the Titans change course and they trade for a right tackle tomorrow, I will be elated. But the getting mad about something that's already happened, that's what's happened. The idea of these guys are going to do exactly what the last guys did that got them fired. Like, this is what got the last guys fired. Roger Saffold was making too much money, so you cut him. Fine. He was injury prone, he was older, and again, he was making $12 million. Fine. Cut him. But you can't put a 270-pounder out there. And I heard all the excuses last year. I heard Jared Aaron Brewer. He'll be good at center. He couldn't even snap the ball because he was so little. So when you're trying to, oh no, PT, he'll be fine. He was just terrible last year and the year before that, but he didn't play much because of the gambling suspension. So the gambling suspension, by the way, is not a good thing. Like, it's not like, oh, well, he was terrible last year, but it's okay because he got suspended for gambling. No, that means that he's not that good and he doesn't know the rules. That's a little bit of a problem. Dylan says, do you tell the right tackle story on your national shows too? I don't know if I do, but there are a lot of Floyd Reese things that I talk about. Whenever I try to tell a Floyd story on national radio, I preface it with the fact that he used to be a general manager and then was, the number 2 in New England for a while. Because, he was. Lenny says, enough with the right tackle story, Jared. Get me a better right tackle than PT and Jalen Duncan, and you won't have to hear the right tackle story. The right tackle story is not my fault. It's your fault. And not you, the fans, but it's your fault, the Titans. Because 2022, you tried to fudge it without a right tackle. And 2023, do you remember, Ian, who the starting right tackle was on the first day of training camp last year?
No.
Jamarco Jones.
Yeah. I wouldn't have guessed that probably. It would have taken me a hot minute. I mean, I remember they went and got Hubbard, but
we don't have a right tackle. Like, I'm just going to keep saying, you're like, oh, no, yeah, you're this, oh, yeah. One texter says right tackle is the one spot on the line where you can have a guy that isn't that good. Any football coach with a brain will tell you that. I'm sorry, babe, but that man coached for 20 years, and he didn't feel that way. And I don't know how many football coaches you on the text line's talking to. Here, I'm going to text a former NFL coach right now. And I'm going to say how important a former NFL head coach, offensive side of the ball. And I'm going to say, is right tackle important? And Ian, what do you think they're going to say back? I have sent the text with 2 question marks. Is right tackle important? Question mark, question mark. What do you think they're going to say?
Yes.
I would agree. Skylar says, Jared, you're just a crybaby because Rand doesn't talk to you. You would love him if he told you everything like Barry Trotz. Jared, you're a Rand hater for life no matter what. Ian, how many times have I talked about Rand this hour?
A few.
How many times have I talked about Brian Callahan?
A few.
You know why? Because he said it. Because Brian Callahan's the one who said it. Now, if Rand got up there and said that Nicholas Petit-Frere is going to be right tackle, I'd be going crazy about him. Because, again, it's not personal. It's personnel. And this is sometimes people just want to hear what makes them feel good. There is a difference between affirmation and information. And as a society we are really fractured. You know, there's so many options now as far as what news you consume, what you hear, what you listen to. And I think we are fractured as a society between the people that want affirmation and the people who want information. So if you want affirmation, I can tell you, Bill Callahan will take these 2 crap bums and he will turn them into all pros the way Rich Gannon said he did with Barry Sims on the Oakland Raiders in 2002. Oh, way to go. We don't do that. And we're never going to do that. But a lot of people, they want to hear it. They want to hear it all the day. They just want to hear good, 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 good. My team's good. That's all they want to hear. And with me, I think you have to earn it. Like, I think you have to earn those things. And when you sit there, you look at me, you tell Nicholas Petit-Frere, you're going to tell me Nicholas Petit-Frere is going to be the right tackle of this team? I'm sorry. Joey says, I share your concerns about the line. It happened too many times. As soon as one of the quarterbacks snapped the ball, the defense had already penetrated the line and destroyed Levis or Tannehill before they were able to get set. Ridley and Hopkins are awesome, but if you don't have time to throw the ball, it won't matter. Agreed. And the one thing I do think that we have to keep in mind, and I think Brian Callahan does know this, because in that same Kevin Clark's now with ESPN, in that same ESPN interview Brian Callahan did, he was asked about Joe Burrow and, Levis. And he was like, Joe Burrow is, pretty good. Like, Joe Burrow is, well, let's not. And I do think that the Bengals had a lot of holes that even though they spent money on the offensive line and they did improve the offensive line and things. But Joe Burrow makes a lot of guys better because he's Joe Burrow. And you don't have that. And it would be arrogant to walk into the job to think that you can coach things the way that you coached them when you had Joe Burrow, and he's not going to do that. At least I think he's not going to do that. One texter says, Jared, these people are getting confused with the NFL and Pop Warner when it comes to right tackle. Do we have, offensive line positions in Pop Warner? Do we have a right guard? I'm sure we can line them up in 5 and just say go.
I guess so.
I don't know what the qualifications for a right tackle are. One texter says, You told Brian Callahan what to do, and he isn't listening, ? Pretty sure we still have time to fill more spots. You cannot expect him to fill every hole in one part of an offseason. So actually, Jim Harbaugh was asked about that at the owners' meetings, and he was kind of asked do you think that it's possible to fill every hole? And Jim Harbaugh said, that's why we're here. Like that's why we have the offseason. And I heard that. I thought about cutting that and being like, okay, this is for everybody out there that says you can't fill every hole. I mean, you telling me they couldn't have filled the inside linebacker with the green dot on the back of the helmet? Or are you telling me that they chose not to because they did bring in Jerome Baker for a visit and they didn't sign him? More of your phones at 615-737-1025. Plus, speaking of Harbaugh did say something yesterday that I'm going to just, I'm not going to pretend he didn't say it, but I am going to assume that he didn't mean it, and I kind of hope that he didn't mean it. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Despite having a daughter who's a Wolverine, I do love Marvin Harrison. But what I love even more is my nephew, Justin Herbert, being healthy. And that's what job one's going to be for Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman. The offensive line, Mel, it's about keeping Justin Herbert healthy. If this is year 2, I completely agree with you.
Okay, that was Mike Tannenbaum, his mock draft yesterday. Even though the Chargers don't have any receivers, his mock draft yesterday at 5 has the Chargers taking Joe Alt. Now, I had the same reaction Ian had right there in that cut. Is Justin Herbert actually Mike Tannenbaum's nephew, or is that like when I say Mark Jankowski is my guy? Like, I don't,
It has to be a joke.
It has to be, right? Whatever. So, Tannenbaum saying, hey, we're keeping him healthy. That's important. So Jim Harbaugh was at the owners' meetings. He was asked about the importance of the offensive line. Remember, again, they have no receivers, and they do have a left tackle. And I'm scared to death they're going to draft Joe Alt. Here's what Jim Harbaugh had to say.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line to me is important. I mean, if I asked you the question of, like, what position group depends on no other position group to be good, but every other position group depends on them to be good, what position group is that? Offensive line. They're not relying on any other position group to be good. They go out and they're good. But yet every other position group relies on the offensive line to be good. And then the D-line, they'll be the ones that argue back, we don't need the offensive line to be good. Do you? Do you like when the offense has a 12-play drive and the field position? Yeah, okay, you're right. It's like, so yeah, that building that kind of offensive line, that's exciting. Can't wait to do that.
Oh, I don't like it. I don't like it because it worries me that he's going to take Joe Alt.
Smokescreen.
So that's the thing, is this time of the year, there is one thing, and I know that I always say to people when it comes to asking questions in press conferences and things like that, you have to ask the question. And the reason why is because, a man's going to answer it however he wants to answer it. But you have to ask it and then judge based upon the response whether or not they're telling you the truth. But this time of the year, I'll hear things that are reported and I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't think that's true. And then people get mad. And they'll say, well, but he said, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't. Maybe. I guess, again, as I lectured everybody on the difference between information and affirmation earlier, I guess maybe this is the Jared Stillman affirmation comfort coming out here. But I'm going to assume that Harbaugh's still going wide receiver. Just they don't have any receivers. So I'm just going to assume that Harbaugh's going wide receiver and that, to Ian's point, that was a smokescreen or, Harbaugh is just laying the groundwork of, we want to have a good offensive line. But that doesn't mean we're taking an offensive lineman with the 5th pick when we could, take Marvin Harrison Jr. Chad is up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting, Chad. Go ahead.
Well, it's well regarded that the most important positions in the NFL in order, quarterback number 1 all day long, left tackle number 2 to protect your quarterback, and then rush defensive line. That's been around, rush defensive end. That's been around for 100 years. So then you fast forward to the draft, you're going to see 4 quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm convinced of that now that I see J.J. McCarthy number 2 in just about every mock that I'm seeing. And then now you're at, what did we just talk about? What's the most important position in the game? 4 quarterbacks and then a left tackle. You may see 4 quarterbacks and Joe Alt go left. And then you've got 9 first-round grades on wide receivers. So why you take one right there, I don't know. Your thoughts?
My thought on that is that Marvin Harrison Jr., if he's available, if it goes quarterback, the Chargers are sitting there on the clock with a franchise quarterback and Marvin Harrison Jr. available. They already have a left tackle. So, okay. So if the most important positions are quarterback, the Chargers have a quarterback. Left tackle, the Chargers, Rashawn Slater, Pro Bowl left tackle, have it. Rush defensive line between Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, though those guys are almost never healthy together, I'd say they have it. What are they missing? And when it comes to what are the most valuable positions in the NFL, I believe that the most valuable positions are the positions that get paid the most. And right now, it's quarterback number one, and then it's kind of a tie between pass rusher, receiver, and left tackle, right? Laramie Tunsil, Tyreek Hill, and I think Nick Bosa all crack into the $30 million range. So you're never going to see a running back going at $30 million. You don't see corners at $30 million. You don't see inside backers at $30 million or safeties at $30 million or interior offensive line at $30 million. You see left tackle, pass rusher, quarterback, wide receiver in the $30 million range. And that's why, again, and not that the mock drafts are right, because there are always going to be, every draft there's going to be a moment. And you all know that. That's why we watch the draft. That's why we love the draft. But if you look at all these mock drafts right now, everything in the top 10, quarterbacks, receivers, Neighbors, Adunze, and Harrison. So now you're at 7. Alt is 8. Dallas Turner, a pass rusher, is 9. And I'm trying to think if there's kind of anything else that floats in there inside the top 10. It's a Jets with a tackle, maybe a Fashanu or a Brock Bowers or something like that. I mean, so we know what the most valuable positions are. That doesn't mean that right tackle is not important. But again, I'm not complaining about left tackle because I think the Titans are going to draft their left tackle, and I think it's going to be Joe Alt. Wes in Clarksville says, so if Alt is gone, what's plan B? Have no tackle and get a receiver? See, now that's the hard part, is there is a debate between Marvin Harrison and Neighbors. And I prefer Neighbors to Marvin Harrison. That's just me. Some people will call me crazy. This opinion is starting to pick up steam supposedly around the league, which makes me think that it's probably wrong. And so I'm probably wrong. But again, Neighbors, I look at it like this. Like, I think in this draft, there are probably Caleb Williams, Dallas Turner, Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know if I think these other 3 quarterbacks are elite. I haven't studied them enough. I'm going to say there's like 5 true elite players. I'm like, that's an elite player. Williams, Harrison, Neighbors, Alt, Dallas Turner. And if you want to throw Brock Bowers in there, I can listen to that. Like, that, if you're on the clock and you've got an elite player there that you can take, I almost think you have to take the elite player, because 3 years from now, nobody will know, well, you needed to tackle. And there's a real fine line there of, well, do you draft for what you need, or do you draft for the best players and then build your team around the best players? Free agency would tell you that the Titans have decided we're just going to get the best players. And I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem with, at the end of the day, you do have to have a right tackle. And the 2 guys they have there right there, that's not a right tackle. I'm letting you fudge it at guard. If there's a battle between Radens and Brunskill for right guard, I'm letting you fudge that. I'm letting you fudge it at safety. And I can be convinced to fudge it at inside backer, when it comes to the guy that wears the green dot, though I do think the green dot is important. I think that Azeez last year was kind of fudging it. Like, I think Azeez is fine. That's what I'm talking about. Like, Jack Gibbons on the... That makes me a little nervous. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So last night's win for the Predators was a special kind of win. It is the kind of win that every team wishes they could get, and that very few teams actually do. And I'll explain what I mean, and we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. The Predators last night captured their 18th straight game with a point. I want to say 18th straight victory. They haven't won in 18 straight, but it feels like they've won in 18 straight, but they have gotten a point in 18 straight games. It is amazing to me. 18 games is 22% of an 82-game season. That is a fourth of the year that the Predators have gotten a point in the last month and a half or however long it's been. And there was something I asked Barry Trotz about yesterday on the program, which was something that I had noticed in the Detroit game, which is this team, when this all started, the St. Louis road trip and the victory there and the canceled extra days in Vegas and the trip where they beat Vegas on the road, and then they beat L.A., and then they beat San Jose, and then they beat Anaheim, and then they came back, and they beat Ottawa, and they beat Minnesota. They just went on a heater. And what happened was when they lost 9-2 to Dallas on that Thursday night, Roman Josi talked to the media, Ryan McDonough talked to the media, and they both talked about how unacceptable the performance was and how it was time for the team to finally get it together, that it was time because the season was on the line that Saturday going to St. Louis. And on that road trip, that team played like losing was not an option. And normally when teams have their backs against the walls, especially the Predators, over the last handful of years, they seem to always find a way to win. Peter Laviolette used to talk about that in the playoffs. Whichever team plays more desperate is the team that's going to win. And so when the Predators went on a heater and then they got to the trade deadline and they beat Colorado and they could look at themselves in the mirror and say, we're contenders, I understood that, hey, this team's pretty good. But I also know that in sports, you can't always ride the high every game, can you? And yet, that's exactly what they've done. I wasn't surprised by the effort and intensity with which they played last Thursday night at Florida against a team that was the betting favorite to win the Stanley Cup. I was surprised that they had the exact same level of intensity and will to win on Saturday against Detroit. And then last night, they did not bring their A game at the beginning, whether it was rust on a guy like Lauzon coming back into the lineup, or whether it was a bad play by Luke Shin here, or they hit a couple of posts there, or whatever. They found themselves down 3-0, and then there was a bad call, or a bad non-call, I should say, on what I thought was kind of a holding of the stick of Lauzon on the fourth goal, and yet this team refused to lose. Even the goal that put them back in the game, which was the Forsberg goal in which Jason Zucker made an incredible, a strong effort play right at the front of the net, and he wasn't able to get it through the goaltender, but Forsberg, with the effort to follow from behind it, poked it in. That was a play of will. That wasn't a play of talent. I know Philip Forsberg's got a lot of it. He just scored 40 goals again, but that goal was not a talent goal. That was an effort goal, just like his game winner on Saturday. This team just refuses to lose. And everybody always wants a team that refuses to lose, but it is so hard to have one. It is so hard to find a group of players in baseball, basketball, football, hockey, whatever, that every night they show up and the intensity is at least an 8 out of 10. It's hard, but it's not impossible. And in order to do it, you've got to have a team that wants to be there. You have to have a team that is dedicated to each other, that literally wakes up in the morning and thinks, I get to go to the rink, I get to play with these teammates, and we know not everybody's like that. I can promise you the Ottawa Senators aren't waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning and saying, I get to go to the rink today. But that's what this group is doing. Barry Trotz was on our show yesterday. I said, how is it that this team seems to never quit? This team seems to bring it every night. And I mean, how is this even possible?
I think the group found joy in competing every night and preparing to compete and then performing on the ice. Because I go downstairs, in the mornings and check on things there and what have you. And when teams are pushing and there's pressure, it's usually quiet, and you could just feel the tension, And this group is loose. They're having fun. They understand that there's a standard, I guess, and they've accepted that standard. They haven't fought that standard, which is the reason I think that they're having fun and winning, is because they've accepted that standard and they go, you know what? If we put the work in, it's fun. Competing's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Winning's fun.
That's the thing. That's what they've realized. And so all the buzzwords, right? All of the intangibles that really define championship teams, everybody's got good players in every sport because the worst teams get the best draft picks. They split TV revenue. So everybody's got good players. The difference is some have elite players, but also some have those intangibles. Culture, chemistry, integrity. This team has those things. That's what makes them different. That's why they refuse to lose. Everybody wants to build a good culture. Everybody on their opening press conference talks about building a culture. Mike Vrabel said a lot of things when he was the coach of the Titans, but one thing that really stood out to me was early in his tenure, he was asked about culture. And he said, culture doesn't matter when you're winning. Culture matters when you're losing. When things aren't going well, that's when guys start to point fingers. That's when guys get upset. That's when guys don't want to be at the rink. That's when guys, what happened when they were losing? Roman Josi and Ryan McDonough got up and said, we have to play better. He didn't say they have to play better. He didn't say guys on our team, they're not. He said we have to play better. Barry Trotz didn't just punish the guys that weren't performing. He punished the whole group by taking away the Vegas trip. And that's what has built this culture for this team, is that everybody's on the same page. Everybody is pushing in the right direction. And so last night, when you've got a game where you're down 3-0, where one guy makes a mistake and it ends up in the back of the net, where another guy makes a mistake and it ends up in the back of the net, where all of a sudden you're playing a team, the defending cup champions, they're skating up and down the ice. It's unbelievable. And you don't quit at 3-0, and you don't quit at 4-1. That isn't a talent win. Plus, you don't have more talent than Vegas. They have better players than you. That's a culture win. That's the kind of win that, again, I remember 2017. And I hate everybody always comparing everything to 17 because, again, we know how that story ended. It's like when the Titans traded for L'Jarius Sneed, and fans on Twitter are like, when's the last time we had corners like this? And I was like, I remember people said the same thing with Malcolm Butler, Logan Ryan, and Adoree Jackson. Well, that group, Jared, they weren't. No. You know how that story ends. That's why you dismiss it. And I don't like comparing anything to the 17 Predators because we know how that story ends. So it's like, oh, my God, it was so great. It was so this. It was so that. It was so. But that wasn't really how I felt about the team at the time or anything like that. But in that playoff run, that team just glued together. And you could tell every single one of those guys wanted to be at the rink. And you could tell that every single one of those guys wanted to play for each other. And you could tell that every single one of those guys wanted to win for each other, including guys that, quite frankly, sometimes I thought didn't bring the greatest team efforts around, like Ryan Ellis or PK Subban or, some other guys. And they did it anyways. I mean, and I'm going to tell you, this is a culture win. Yesterday, Barry talked about adding players and deleting players, which I thought was a really odd term for a GM to use, but I kind of liked it. He's talking about Johansson and Duchesne. I deleted them. And I know Duchesne's got 24 goals in Dallas. It doesn't matter. Matt Duchene was not a culture fit for what this team's trying to do. If you have Matt Duchene on your team, you don't win last night. That's the point. And when you sign up for Barry Trotz, and see, this is what's happened in sports with all the analytics gurus, is that everybody wants to quantify everything. Everybody wants the answer ahead of time. Everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to have some sort of objective formula that tells you everything as far as, from a binary standpoint as to whether or not you're going to win or whether or not you're going to lose or whatever. But when you sign up for Barry Trotz, you're not going to get that. Because Barry Trotz never coached like that. Because things like heart and effort and intensity, and is your head in the right place, and are you a good teammate, and chemistry, and that's what matters to him. And so I don't know what the analytics say about last night in Vegas and how good they were and how fast they were. Here, I want to pull up moneypuck.com because they always have the deserve to win meter. And I'm not saying that I didn't think the Predators were going to lose at any point last night, because I definitely thought that they were going to lose last night. But I do wonder, what the deserve to win meter ended up being last night as far as the Predators were concerned. And I bet it wasn't very good. Actually, the deserve to win meter said the Predators deserve to win 56. I can't. This is bullcrap. There's no way the Predators deserve to win 56% there. So take that for what you want. This was a culture win. And I got to tell you, that gives me hope that this team could be pretty good. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks, score big this spring with Lee Company and the Nashville Predators in the 10K Power Play giveaway. Enter for a chance to win a Kohler home generator or $10,000 towards Lee Company Home Services. That's right, a Kohler home generator or $10,000 towards Lee Company Home Services. That's LeeCompany.com/giveaway to enter. Again, LeeCompany.com/giveaway for the 10K Power Play giveaway. Contest entries are accepted until Saturday, April 20th. Lee Company, all you need. By the way, I have a hot take. I have got a Preds smoking hot take. And trust me, I know some of you guys think I don't believe that. This one hit me last night during the game. And I'm going to bust out this smoking hot take. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
Holding coming out, being watched very closely by Theodore. They give the puck back now to Josi, cutting in. He scores! Roman Josi scores! And the Predators now are 18 games into an unbeaten streak. Oh my! 5-4 the final.
So it hit me last night at the game. Forsberg has the big goal that kind of, puts them back in it at 4-3, and then they go on the power play, and of course Yossi's on the power play, and Forsberg's on the power play, and Gus Nyquist ends up scoring. And now it's 4-4. And then in overtime, it's Josi, Forsberg, and O'Reilly. And I'd like to think that given the way 3-on-3's played, that might be like the best three you can put out on the ice for 3-on-3 overtime. Like, they all can handle things in their own end. They're all okay defensively. They can all score. They've all, O'Reilly's the worst skater of the group, and he's a pretty good skater. He's a great two-way player. But anywho, it hit me last night at the game. And I know people are going to disagree with this. And I know Pekka Rinne's got a statue. But Philip Forsberg and Roman Josi have been the models of consistency as far as good player, never causing any problems, always kind of in the middle of when the team's successful. It's always about them. And they the entire group, they're great leaders. Like the group thrives on them. And as much as Pekka Rinne was a good player, which he was, and Shea Weber was a good player, which he was, it seems to me that the models of consistency and production are those two. And I said to somebody I was at the game with last night, I said, I think Josi and Forsberg, when all is said and done, are going to be the Steve McNair and Eddie George of the Predators. Like, the Titans have had other good players, and the Predators have had other good players. And Pekka Rinne is certainly a good player, just like Derrick Henry was a great Titan. I think we can all agree. Apparently, everybody except for Al Smith thinks the Titans should retire number 22. If the Titans put somebody out there next year wearing 22, I'm going to go crazy. But again, when we talk about the gold standard of the Titans, I think Derrick Henry's the best player to ever play for the Titans. But again, when we talk about kind of the gold standard of the Titans, the era, it's always the Steve McNair and Eddie George era. And those two are the two most popular players in the history of the Titans. And I think that when all is said and done, I think that Josi and Forsberg are going to be remembered the same way. I think that they are the two guys that have always been here through the elite success that the organization has had. They've been here. And I think that, again, we talk about culture and success and, the intangibles and leadership. And when this team needs it, they rely on those two guys. And they should, because those two guys make the most money. And that's why you always ask those guys, hey, man, you guys have got to step up. What's the old saying, Ian? Pay what you owe.
That's right.
Those guys do it every year. That's why early in the season when the team wasn't playing well and I didn't think Josi was playing particularly well, I was going crazy. And people were like, oh, Yossi's 5-on-5 Corsi stats say that he's actually doing okay and that he's not doing great, but he's okay. And I don't give a rat's ass. This is Roman freaking Josi. Like, I want elite because I know it's there. And then when I get elite out of Roman Josi, my team doesn't lose. And I'm convinced that, again, no disrespect to Pekka, no disrespect to Shea Weber. I don't really think that there would be anybody else in this discussion, right? Like, if we're talking about the greatest Predators of all time, I think that's probably the 4, and there's probably a large gap before you get to number 5. Unless you have an objection.
No, not really.
Who would you say is number 5?
It's a good question. I'd have to go back and think about that for a minute.
I think it's probably Saros.
You think so? It could
Probably.
be. Yeah, it could be.
I mean, like, David Legwand, no.
I mean, do you count Paul Correa?
No, because those guys, they were here for 1 year. Those guys
He was here for longer than a year, but Paul Correa was very talented as far as overall talented players.
Those guys were like hired guns. Those guys aren't Predators.
Like Peter Forsberg, I can't count that, but Korea is a little bit more borderline. Steve Sullivan was up there.
Yeah, but you wouldn't put Steve Sullivan ahead of UC Saros.
No, probably not.
Wouldn't put David Legwan ahead of him.
No, I don't think so. I don't think
Wouldn't
I
put
could.
Tomas Vokoun ahead of him.
No. Suter, it would be close.
But everybody hates him.
Yeah, but he turned out to be really good.
I mean, he can't be on the list of the fan, like this, again, we're talking like Steve McNair, Eddie George, Derrick Henry, Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi, Pekka Rinne. You can't be on this list if the entire fan base hates you. I mean, I would guess the argument, if you're going to, I think Mike Fisher might probably go in there, like him and Josi, or him and Saros in that kind of fifth spot, but Fisher was more of like
heart and soul guy.
Yeah, he wasn't like a production guy like those dudes were.
Yeah.
So I'm just telling you, I really think that these are the two best players to ever play for the Predators, and that these dudes, it doesn't matter. You could pay them $100 million and they would play hard every night. And you could pay them $1 million and they would play hard every night. These guys are awesome. And I think what's happened is they were always good. Even with Hines as the coach, they were good. But I think that this coach has unlocked, between like O'Reilly and the coach, I think they have unlocked another gear in these dudes. And that's why, while I don't think that you have that big boy forward to go up against Connor McDavid, I'm like, maybe between those two, you can kind of equal one great elite player that if you end up in a playoff series with an Edmonton, yeah, they've got, I still don't think he beat Edmonton, but let's say Vancouver, Pettersson. And it's like, yeah, they've got Elias Pettersson, but you've got Forsberg and Josi. And I think that Steve McNair was never the same without Eddie George, and I think that Eddie George was a big part of Steve McNair. And so that's how I feel about these two. I think these two guys, I'll never forget when the Atlanta Braves won their 14th straight division title when I was a kid. Now, obviously, huge Braves fan. And John Smoltz was the closer, because he had been starting, and then he had the elbow surgeries, and he went to closer. And the Braves had won their 14th straight title, and Smoltz is on the mound. And when they won it, you know how usually the catcher and the pitcher, they jump up and down, and then everybody joins kind of the pile. Smoltz ran right over to Chipper Jones, and they embraced in a big hug. And I'm like, to me, that's what I'm talking about here. And that's what Josi and Forsberg are. Boy, the text line is popping now. And again, a lot of people are trying to sit here and talk about how great Mike Fisher was. I mean, Mike Fisher was good, but again, UC Saros, from a statistical standpoint, has been elite. Mike Fisher was never elite. So I'm going to go, again, as far as remember when they inducted David Poyle into the Golden Hall, or I think that's what they're calling it, the team's Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, who belongs in the team's Hall of Fame? Pekka, Shea Weber, Josi Forsberg, Trotz. Anybody else? Do you think Saros has done enough to be in the team's Hall of Fame?
Maybe not yet.
Would you put David Legwan in the team's Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Would you?
I think I probably would. Yeah.
I was always disappointed by David Legwan.
I mean, did he live up to the second overall pick? Probably not, as you would hoped. But, I mean, he played his entire career, and he still leads the team or franchise and whatever.
Nah, Forsberg's past him.
I guess maybe just games played.
But would you put Fisher in there?
Be pretty close, yeah. I would consider it, yeah.
Would you put Laviolette in there?
Probably not yet, no.
So I would put Laviolette in before I'd put David Legwan in. Laviolette won.
Yeah.
But again,
they didn't win the cup.
Some of you guys in the text line, Dylan says that PK Subban wasn't here long enough, but no, PK is not in the team's Hall of Fame.
No, can't do that.
One texter says, you've always wanted a big boy forward. Has Philip Forsberg evolved into that? I think he might be the big boy guy. I mean, watch Austin Matthews play, then watch Forsberg play. And I don't mean that's take anything away from Forsberg, but doesn't Matthews have something like 65 goals right now?
I think he has 60 goals, yeah.
Here's how good McDavid and Draisaitl are. The guy that plays with them just scored 50 goals last night.
Yeah, Hyman. He's got 52.
So, like, I think Forsberg's, like, at the same level as Sam Reinhart. And that's still, I mean, like, those are freaking good players. But I'm not sure I'd say, like, big boy forward. All right, Fitz joins us next. 615-737-1025 here on the program. I want Fitz's thoughts because he's got no skin in the game. I want Fitz's thoughts on L'Jarius Sneed and the little amount that the Chiefs got in return for him, and if that adds up at all. We'll do that next. By the way, Brent says, what about the Pred Scarbini Club? Boy, I could go all day about that one. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company. So apparently Paul Kaharski has said that L'Jarius Sneed passed his physical. So if L'Jarius Sneed has passed his physical, then why has L'Jarius Sneed not signed with the Tennessee Titans? Right? Like, isn't the physical kind of the most important thing? Like, when the trade was agreed to on Friday night, the Titans sending a 2025 third-round pick to the Kansas City Chiefs. In exchange, the Kansas City Chiefs sending over L'Jarius Sneed, who's a really, really good player. I mean, it should be noted that he's never been to a Pro Bowl or he's not an All-Pro, but I'm not sure. You know, I know what good players are, and he's a good player. So, L'Jarius Sneed gets sent to the Titans, and then we know what the money is. Yesterday, Ian Rappaport reported the terms of the contract like it was something new, but what I did think was important was the signing bonus, because it's a $20 million signing bonus. I have no idea what the cash in year one's going to be. My guess is we're probably looking at a $3 million salary, $4 million salary, something like that. But at the same time, the reason that he would want a big signing bonus is because then that means that no matter what waivers they get on the knee or whatever they do about all of that, then he'll still get at least that much of the money up front. Let's say, again, that they're giving him a $4 million salary this year and a $20 million signing bonus. That means that he would be getting $24 million in cash of a $55 million guarantee. So that means that he's pretty much halfway there to his guarantees, even if the knees go out on him in year one and then the Titans have a way of avoiding the deal. To me, there's something that's going on here, and I don't know what that is. And I just think, again, we talk about this all the time on the radio show, which is the duck theory. If it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, chances are it's probably a duck. And I think many of you guys, oftentimes in your life, sometimes you think about things too much to where you're like, wait a minute, hold up. This really could be this instead of that, and it could be, and I'm like, guys, remember the duck theory. So with Sneed, he's a really good player. Nobody's questioning that. Okay. Really good players don't go for third-round picks in the next year's draft. It's as simple as that. A contending team, and the Chiefs we know are contending. They just won a Super Bowl, and they won a Super Bowl by the thinnest of margins. A contending team does not give away a player for free that is a really good player, especially when they've let it be known to everybody that they're willing to trade him away. They let everybody know. We're willing to trade away L'Jarius Sneed, and because they're willing to trade him away, everybody could have made an offer. And who made an offer? We hear the Colts maybe, but it wasn't better than the Titans offer because, again, the Titans offer got him, and that's a third-round pick in next year's draft. So then Sneed gets a big contract. But just because he gets a big contract, that's what good players get. So if he's a good player, he should expect to get $19 million or something like that, which he got. And yet the deal's not done yet, and nobody wanted to trade for him, and Kansas City didn't want to give him a deal. I don't understand this. Somebody help me out here. So to me, this has to be about the knees. And so I think that there's something to this. So 615-737-1025. I still am I'm wondering when the Sneed deal is going to drop. Like, I wonder when it's going to come down and when it's going to pop in, and then we'll never hear, because, again, this always comes from the agents, but we'll never know what it is that ended up being the reason why he went for so little. Because let's say they end up getting a waiver, the agent is never going to come out and say, oh, yeah, we signed a waiver because his knees are so bad that the Titans won't be on the hook for the guaranteed money if this happens or doesn't happen. Jason Fitz joins us now in the program. Fitz, I got a question for you, which is when it comes to L'Jarius Sneed and the Titans, the deal's not done yet. It was reported on Friday. It's Wednesday. Kaharski says he's passed his physical. I'm skeptical given the price the Titans had to pay in order to get him and the fact that nobody else wanted him and the Chiefs didn't want to extend him. I am skeptical about these knees with Sneed. What have you heard?
Nothing that makes me think the deal isn't going to happen. I think your skepticism is fair. I will say that, because realistically, Sneed, they could have kept him. They could have figured out ways to keep him for one more year. I thought the move was surprising on the Chiefs' standpoint. If I'm Patrick Mahomes, I'm not particularly pleased about it. And frankly, knowing that if he leaves in a year, they would be likely to get a compensatory pick for him anyway. I just thought it was unusual to me that the Chiefs moved on from him. So I also think it is strange. I think you're fair to say it is strange that we have not heard any finalization. We haven't heard anything on the contract being finalized. These are all weird things to me. So, and I don't like it when a transaction starts off weird. That's the easiest way to say it. I lived the Jimmy G contract with the Raiders. Started off weird because of a physical issue, and everybody tried to deny it. And then it turned out to be a foot issue that made him a shell of himself anyway. So, when these things are delayed and when the numbers aren't out officially from everybody, there's usually an issue. So I think it's concerning, but nobody's saying anything in any circle I'm in.
So when it comes to the Sneed thing, and he went for a third-round pick in next year's draft, shouldn't a team like the Chiefs just try to win the Super Bowl again instead of collecting a third-round pick in the next year's draft?
Yes. I think it was a terrible move by the Chiefs. I don't understand the third-round pick aspect of it because, let's also go back to what the Chiefs are and who the Chiefs are. They won this year because their defense played their butts off, and we know that. And part of the reason they went all in on keeping Chris Jones in the building because it gave him the best shot at a three-peat. So I've asked our insiders, Charles Robinson, I know comes on with you guys every week also. I keep trying to get my head wrapped around why, if you're all in on paying Chris Jones all that money, why would you just let L'Jarius Sneed walk for essentially nothing? And you can tell me that there's replacement value in the building, but I have a hard time believing that, even if you think you have somebody that can step in and play for the cost that they can fit under the salary cap, they can make it work this year. Why not at least run it back for one more year and then figure it out from there? So I honestly, I know we're never allowed to question the Chiefs because they've won back-to-back Super Bowls. I think this made the Chiefs weaker as a team. I think this was the wrong move for Kansas City to make. I think L'Jarius can still play at a high level. So I'm stunned.
So I can't get over the knees. I'll be honest with you. I think that what's going to happen is I think Sneed's going to play that first year, and then I think each year after that it's going to be risky. And I just can't. Here's what I can't get over, Fitz. All things considered, if Sneed's healthy, then Kansas City probably wants to keep Sneed, first and foremost. Secondly, let's say they can't afford him. Their owner's a total cheap ass. I don't know if you saw the article in The Athletic, but who was the linebacker that left that said, we're lucky when we get a T-shirt or a chair to sit on in the locker room. So, Willie Gay. So when, maybe the owner says, we can't pay him and pay Chris Jones, fine, but still good players, even if they're on the tag, go for more than a third in next year's draft. And then he goes for a third in next year's draft and he gets all this guaranteed money. Something's not adding up. A.J. Brown had bad knees, and he got traded for a first and a third that day, much less 2 years out. This is why it doesn't add up to me.
Well, and I think part of what we do have to acquiesce here is that the Chiefs are where they are because they have a great quarterback, yes, but also because they've done a great job of talent recognition and talent development. We know that. They've drafted really well for the most part. We know that. The Chiefs are a well-run organization, not well-owned, but well-run organization from football minds. So the question is, do you believe that Rand Carthon got one over on the Chiefs? And that would take a lot of benefit of the doubt, and I think the Chiefs have earned some benefit of the doubt. So the question is, what do the Chiefs know that we don't, that they're willing to let him walk? And even the aspect of, as you talk about, the guaranteed money, and as you talk about the knees and all of that, if you are, what I can't make sense is that the Chiefs didn't have to do anything right now for 1 year. So for them to be comfortable letting him out, either he was being such a cancer about not getting the paycheck and you just want to let him walk because of that, or something. It just doesn't make a ton of sense. But if you're the Titans, are you willing to, and this is where it becomes interesting because I think the Titans have done a nice job of building a roster around Will Levis as a whole that I think is going to make them more competitive, the luxury you get under a rookie contract. But I also think it's fair to look at the money you're spending. Just because, like if you're sitting here renovating a house, just because you suddenly get a check from your mortgage lender for $500,000 to renovate your house, doesn't mean that that money is not poorly spent if you put it in the basement instead of the kitchen, right? Like, you got to make sure that you're spending money on the right things just because you have the money to spend. Does L'Jarius Sneed make the Titans 3 or 4 wins better? Man, that's a hard answer for me. And the amount of money they're giving him over the next few years, I mean, it's hard. But also, you acquire a good player, a great player at times. So, it's a little bit of you got to trust your analysis versus the Chiefs' analysis. The Chiefs had him in the room, and we both know this, man. If a team that's had him in the room lets him go 99% of the time, there's a reason why.
Yeah, Jason Fitz is with us on the program. Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, Lloyd Cushenberry, L'Jarius Sneed, Kenneth Murray, Chidobe Awuzie. Are the Titans rebuilding, or are they going for it?
I think they're going. So. This is an interesting. I love the way you phrased that question. I think the rebuild concept has changed a little bit in the NFL, and so teams don't want to suck all the way unless they're trying to suck for one player in particular. So I think what we see a lot of times is like a 2 to 3 year rebuild where you trust that you're going to be able to get talent second, third, fourth round, but you bring in people that can help you in the right now at least remain competitive. It feels like that's a little what they're doing. I disagree wholeheartedly with many people in the national media that have questioned the spending, because to me, like, what else are you going to do? Like, look, if you believe that your team needs, let's say, just as a general number, if you believe your team needs 12 new starters to be competitive at the highest level, you got to ask yourself, how many years does it take to find 12 new starters in the draft? 3 at least, if you hit home runs in 3 consecutive drafts? Yeah, I mean, so like at some point you gotta try and just get better the way you can get better. So I think what the Titans are doing in that sense is actually smart. They're spending money to be better today, and then they're going to trust their draft process to augment that while they move along. I think it's a smart strategy as long as they believe Will Levis can play, and that's. Like, do they believe, this is the question that you guys know the answer to. I think the fair question is Will Levis better than the 4th or 5th best quarterback in this year's draft? And I think the answer to that is probably yes. So they're banking on that, and they're taking the flyer on it. So the only thing that stinks is I think that they're good enough, realistically, that they're going to win enough games that they won't be picking in the top 10 anytime soon. So you better be sure of that answer at some level, because it's not going to be as easy to acquire a quarterback in 1, 2, or 3 years as it is right now where they picked. So they've given us the answer to that. They're going all in.
Jason Fitz is with us. Are you buying the smoke that even though they don't have any receivers, that Jim Harbaugh may draft Joe Alt with the 5th pick?
Yeah, I am 100%. And people I've talked to around the league buy that 100%. Like, Harbaugh loves an offensive line, and Joe Alt is right. We talked about Joe last week, right? Like, so I think Joe is one of those guys that, man, he's plug and play, and in some years, he would actually be the first overall pick in the draft. That's how good he is to the fat guys that I've talked to that have broken it down. So, I think Joe Alt is can't miss. And look, I know they need receivers, but we talk about receivers every single year. Last year was a little bit of a down year, but we talk about receivers every single year. And realistically, if you want to look across the NFL last year, I think the biggest problem teams had is there are not 32 caliber starting tackles in the league, right? So what are you going to do? Where are you going to get one? Joe Alt can be that right out of the gate. Easier to find another wide receiver next year than it is to find another Joe Alt. I think, frankly, the Chargers would be dumb not to take Joe Alt at 5.
Okay, then with that being said, do you, A, buy the J.J. McCarthy smoke into the top 4, and what does that mean for Marvin Jr.?
Yeah, no, I think I am, at this point, based on the people I've talked to and just my own brain, I'm not going to say that I'm reporting anything beautiful here. I would be stunned if quarterbacks don't go 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think Arizona's going to move down. But I don't think Arizona wants to move far enough down to not get one of the top 2 wide receivers in this year's draft. So if the Giants are legitimately looking at a quarterback, and everything points to they are, the Giants are a sweet spot to move up from 6 to 4. The Cardinals move down to 6. They will sit there and they will take the top wide receiver. I think they'll have a shot at Marvin Harrison Jr. at 6, which is alarming to say because he is truly, in everybody's mind, the best wide receiver prospect we've seen in a very long time. So that leaves the Titans at 7 with the option of either the second best receiver, which doesn't seem to make sense, or the second best offensive lineman. So, whatever your flavor of ice cream is on that, whether you want somebody like Fuaga, I've talked to 2
But would you argue that Malik
me,
Neighbors is probably a more elite player than, say, J.C. Latham or Fuaga or Fashanu?
Yes, I think Malik Neighbors is more of a day one difference maker than any of those linemen you just mentioned. If I'm the Titans, by the way, and the line is where I want to go at 7, I'm not sure I don't trade down because, Two guys I talked to last week told me that Bo Nix won't be available by 12. So what happens at 7 is, and look, I'm not saying this from my standpoint. I don't understand the Bo Nix thing. But two guys I talked to that are very smart told me last week that teams are much higher on the Bo Nix than any of us realize. So if I'm to believe that, then that means Bo's not going to make it to 12 to Denver. So that means Minnesota, somebody like that is going to try and move up. If I'm the Titans, I would gladly move down to 11, 12, 13 if that means that 11, 12, or 13 can get their quarterback, and I'll still have a shot at one of those offensive linemen if Joe Alt's not on the board. If Alt's on the board, it's stupid to trade down.
Jason Fitz, as always, joining us on the program. Fitz, great stuff. Appreciate you, bud.
Appreciate you, brother. Thanks, man.
Yep, Jason Fitz, as always. He's buying the Harbaugh smoke. He's buying the Harbaugh smoke. I think what we're going to do, I have a theory on this Harbaugh smoke. We'll do this next. Stillman and Company in your phones, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. That's right. I love FanDuel Sportsbook. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. So whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So many games in the Sweet 16 to pick from. And it looks like the favorites outside of Kentucky have kind of had their way as far as the tournament's been concerned. So I would be looking at the favorites. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, and you can pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM and bet on college hoops until they cut down the net. 21 and over in Present Tennessee. First online real money wager, only $10 first deposit is required. Bonus issues, non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line to me is important. I mean, if I asked you the question of like what position group depends on no other position group to be good, but every other position group depends on them to be good, what position group is that? Offensive line. They're not relying on any other position group to be good. They go out and they're good, but yet every other position group relies on the offensive line to be good. And then the D line, they'll be the ones that argue back. We don't need the offensive line to be good. Do you? Do you like when the offense has a 12-play drive and the field position? Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. You're right. It's like so. Yeah. That building that kind of offensive line. That's exciting. Can't wait to do that.
Jim Harbaugh, and I asked Fitz in the last segment, I said, Fitz, are you buying the smoke that even though they don't have any receivers, they got Josh Palmer, who's a 3, and they got Quentin Johnston, who's a bust? Are you buying that they could still take Joe Alt with the 5th overall pick? And Fitz said, absolutely. So we are, I believe, 28 days away from the NFL draft. It is on Thursday, April 25th. Should be able to remember that. It's my sister's birthday. But Max always tells me every day I need to remind people when the draft is because he doesn't know when it is, even though he's got a cell phone and he can just Google it himself. But again, we're 28 days away. I think if Joe Alt's there at 7, you take him. End of story. I think everything else is what we need to be worried about for the next 28 days. Is what, if not Joe Alt, then what? And if I were the Titans, that would be what I'm worried about. And I would sign at least one tackle who's a Dennis Kelly type tackle to come in here just in case I don't get my tackle and I end up taking Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. Jared versus Joe is next. And boy, do we have a lot to yell and scream about. And we'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios here on a Wednesday at 5 o'clock, which means it's time for Jared versus Joe. Caroline is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how we doing?
Outstanding. So without further ado, let's get to Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
Joe is in Detroit where he is cheering on his Tennessee Volunteers. Caroline, lead us off.
All right, first and foremost, start on those red-hot freaking Predators who cannot lose, have not lost, won't ever lose. Joe, you go first. If you had to bet on it right now, today, make your prediction, money on the table, where are the Predators finishing in the playoffs?
Okay, I will predict a first-round 7-game loss to the Dallas Stars.
Wow!
Ooh.
Do you have any reasoning for that?
Well, first of all,
I guess Detroit said no.
Hotness. What's that?
I said, I guess Detroit said no. Your phone stinks. Continue.
Okay, let's see if I can try to fix this. I believe.
Oh, I think he fixed it.
I don't think he fixed it in the right direction. Let me say this. I think I got all I wanted out of this one. How can we predict that a team that never loses is going to lose 4 games out of 7 in the first round? I mean, I was sitting here thinking as you asked him that question, Caroline, I'm debating between the Western Conference Final or the Stanley Cup Final. Like, I don't think they're going to win the Stanley Cup, but I'm debating between those two. Because, I mean, you saw Adam Vinkin did the stats of teams that get this hot over the course of a season that you are more likely to end up in the Cup Final than you are to lose in the first round. And I know that what happened to the 2013 Chicago Blackhawks has absolutely nothing to do with what's going to happen to the 2024 Nashville Predators. But
Or the 2023 Boston Bruins.
Or the 2020. But I don't think the Boston Bruins won that much.
The Boston Bruins?
Like, I don't think they went on a heater like this.
They won the President's Trophy.
Right, but I'm not talking
more
about
games than
I'm not.
any
No.
other
I'm talking
Bruins
about the
team in
stats
history.
that are teams that go on like 18-game point streaks.
Okay.
So Vingan did the numbers. He talked about it on your show earlier today. Vingan did the numbers, and according to Adam Vingan's numbers, of the 9 teams that have had a 17-game point streak over the last 15 years, 2 won the Cup, 2 lost the Cup, 2 lost in the conference final, 1 lost in the second round, 1 lost in the first round, and then you're the 9th team. So, like, the stats are saying that you are infinitely more likely to get at least to the conference final, history is, than you are to lose in the first or second round. And, I mean, last night, Vegas had everything to play for last night. They played like they had everything to play for. Outside of Mark Stone, they had all their guys back. They were all skating all around the ice and everything else. And I mean, they still won the game. They still won the game. Like, so I have a hard time saying, I mean, I'm debating between Stanley Cup final or conference final. Again, 8 previous teams. You're the 9th. 8 previous teams have done this, and at least 6 have ended up in the conference final. So when Joe says a 7-game series, and I guess we've lost Joe because his phone's not working. When Joe says a 7-game series loss in round 1, it's not impossible. It's not improbable.
Of course it's not impossible.
But at the same time, like, how could you say that? They haven't lost in a month.
I know that Vegas is not everything in the slightest, and like whatever the sports books say, like who cares? But what do you think the odds will be in that series? Let's say it is Dallas. Dallas, Colorado, Vancouver, whoever. Like, how much of an underdog are the Predators going to be?
Well, I think it matters who they play. But I do, like, how do they determine that in, like, betting? Like, can you bet the series on the front end? Like, Dallas is minus 220 to win the series.
I don't know if you can, but let's just act like you can.
Okay, so, I think that it'll probably be, let's say it's Dallas or Winnipeg or one of those teams. I'm thinking it's going to be like Dallas minus 110, Nashville plus 110, right there on the edge. If it's Colorado, it's probably Colorado minus 200, Nashville plus 250. If it's Vancouver, it's probably somewhere there in the middle. And so, I don't think that anybody's going to look, even if it's Colorado, I don't think anyone's going to be like, oh, yeah, Predators have no chance. Again, the Predators have not lost in regulation in a month and a half.
I know.
This is – so, Joe, I think you're crazy saying in the first round. I said right here, right now, I say that it's either going to be the conference final or the cup final because of Adam Vinken's stats.
I love it.
This is actually not bad. We might need to get Joe like this all the time. So, of Adam Vinken's stats, of the 8 previous teams over the last 15 years that have had a 17-game point streak or more, the 2 have won the cup, 2 have lost the cup, 2 have lost in the conference final, 1 lost in the second round, 1 lost in the first round. So you're saying the Preds are on the low end with the 2017 Columbus Blue Jackets, and even though their heater is at the end of the year, you still think they'll lose in the first round?
Yeah, that's a really great stat by Adam, but you're now acting like that's gospel. Look, you still have to look at this team and compare it to the other teams, understanding that the entire season matters and where they finish and, where they're playing. And first of all, my prediction is based in part, and sorry about the phone, by the way, in part on the fact that I think they're going to overtake Winnipeg, and I think they're going to get the 3, and I think they're going to get Dallas will be the 2, and the Avs are going to win the division. Look, I'm just predicting a Game 7 loss in Dallas, but could they make a deeper run? Sure. At this point, I just feel like home ice may end up mattering.
Why? This team's incredible on the road.
Sure, but it's also everything about the playoffs. It's just like every year in the playoffs, there's going to be something like this team dominated this team in the regular season, and then all of a sudden it's like, how the crap are these the 2 same teams now that they're playing in the playoffs? The playoffs flips everything on its ear. And I think this team is not someone, not a matchup anyone out there should relish, has a chance to advance. I'm still I'm hesitant just because as well as they're playing, I still think that when push comes to shove, when that space gets tighter in the playoffs, I think there are just some teams out there that simply have more talent across more lines than the Preds have, and that's the difference.
I watched a team last night with way more talent than the Predators bring their A game against the Predators. The Predators not show up for the first 10 minutes of the game.
Jared? Okay.
And they won the Predators won the friggin' game.
They won the game, and it was an amazing comeback, and the building was amazing and all that. Also, they were down 4-1 because that team kind of kicked their butt for a while, right? Look, Jared, this is weird.
That's my point.
You're right, but you're
the more talented team kicked their butt, and they still lost.
Yes, that was in what happened in one game, Jared.
This team doesn't lose.
You can't take offense. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
fine.
You're saying the first round of the Dallas Stars, the first round.
Carolina asked for a prediction. That's my prediction. I'm sorry, that's so offensive to you.
I'm going to say the Predators get to the Western Conference Final. I think they'll, and I will.
You willing to guarantee that?
No. But I will predict that they will lose in the Western Conference Final, and it will either be to Edmonton or to Colorado. One of those 2 teams, because those are the 2 teams. Now, look, Edmonton's goaltending is terrible, but I just don't think the Predators could ever beat. I just don't think they could ever beat Edmonton. I've never seen the Predators beat Edmonton consistently, and I'm not going to count on it now. And then Colorado is really, really good, and I know they lost to Montreal last night, but since you beat them, they have been unstoppable, and the Predators are going to lose a game at some point along the way. So I'll go Western Conference Final, but I'm not going to round 1. I think there's a better chance the Predators catch Winnipeg than there is that they lose in round 1, but then that would make sense that you're thinking the same thing because you think they're going to lose to Dallas in the first round. So there is that.
Yeah, it's okay.
Carolina
we're
was
guessing.
next.
Good guess.
All right, the Titans traded for L'Jarius Sneed, a 2025 third and a swap of 7ths. Is that a red flag for how low the trade compensation was? Jared, you go first.
Yeah, good players go for more than that. It's like, I understand the idea of, well, you have to pay L'Jarius Sneed too. Right, and Philadelphia had to pay A.J. Brown. And I know that receiver is more valuable than corner, but it's not that much more valuable than corner. Corner is still a really important position. Sneed was the best player on the market, and this is not as deep of a corner draft as it is a receiver draft. Thus, that's why probably nobody has made a move for T. Higgins. That being said, if Cincinnati was willing to accept a next year's third for T. Higgins, I bet somebody would trade for T. Higgins. And so what it tells me is that the Kansas City Chiefs are not interested in retaining L'Jarius Sneed, which is somewhat of a red flag considering that they are a contender, but they've got one of the cheapest owners in the league who won't buy new chairs for the locker room. And so I guess that's a different discussion, a pocket watch over there. But I mean, the fact that nobody else in the league wanted to come with a better offer for a guy that's as good as L'Jarius Sneed is, something is not right. That would be like me telling you on the used car lot, hey, man, I got you a used 2020 Lamborghini, and look how pretty it looks, and it drives well on the test drive, and I'll give it to you for $40,000. Can't buy a Lamborghini for $40,000. I don't care if it's 4 years old. You can't buy a Lamborghini like that. That is what L'Jarius Sneed is. He's one of the best corners in the NFL, and he went for a 2025 third? Yeah, that doesn't add up.
Yeah, I think red flag is strong. It is surprising. I mean, it's surprising. And so, look, the fact that there was the knee thing in the preseason is certainly worth noting. Yeah, I do. What really bothers me about these situations is what you'll have is you'll play the game of telephone on this, and somebody like, oh, I heard his knee stuff, or like blah 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 blah. It's like, okay, so let's get the real documentation on that. What's the actual reporting on the knee? And from what I can gather, and look, Karski on our show today, he wrote a piece and kind of explained the Titans' process of trying to make sure on that knee. I mean, at this point, I have to, based on actual reliable information, not whispers and murmurs, because that's what happens. I mean, even in the media, you get the sewing circle thing going, and it's really like, okay, so you're basing that on what? I mean, I've seen some fan sites who are like, like Chiefs fan sites who are pushing the knee thing big on this because it's kind of a head scratcher. But at this point, I mean, based on reliable information, I have to think that the knee's okay. And if that's other than that, I don't know what else the problem would be. It's the long-term contract. I mean, we don't need to get into the stupid salary cap conversation right now with Jared. There's just no reason. But
we'll get into it with Caroline. I'm sure she'll take your side, Joe.
Well, I would think she would take your side. I mean, whatever you want to call it, cap money. I mean, that's obviously part of this, right? The Chiefs do. Another thing to consider is the Chiefs apparently they have some young corners they very much like. So it's one of those things where they feel like he's a little more expendable than he would be on some other rosters. So red flag is strong. At this point, based on the information we have, I think the knee is okay, but that's certainly going to be something to talk about and watch moving forward.
What did the Titans tell Kaharski that made him feel good about the knee?
Oh, God, essentially the information was shared between the trainers. I mean, that's the big thing is like the due diligence was done at the trainer level between the Titans trainers and the Chiefs trainers. That's boiling it down.
Did the Titans trainers not call Atlanta's trainers on Julio Jones?
Well, I don't know.
And weren't we also told, I think I remember we were told that the Titans got the medical records on Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech said he was good.
Yeah, Jared, in this league, we also heard from you, like, get ready, Eagles, because A.J. Brown's going to be hurt half the year. We don't know what's going to happen with the injuries. So there's no guarantee at all. Now, the Caleb Farley thing.
I will say, to be fair, I think we knew that Julio Jones was going to get hurt. Like, we knew that.
No.
No, let's go back.
You and I, on this program knew that. When you were on this program, Caroline, but everybody else thought, my God, this is going to be the greatest show on turf, Rams.
Let's go back to Julio Jones. His entire career before the previous season, he had played every game or missed one. He had one season before here of missing half the season with a hamstring. One season. It was not a chronic thing. It was not a year after year thing. It was one season. So the idea that, you just knew he was going to be hurt, that is ridiculous. But
I knew somebody in the league. I reported this at the time, and Caroline, I think you remember this. I reported this at the time that somebody who is a league source at the time was a league source that I know, Ian knows, Joe, you might know, Caroline knows, told me that their team's doctors laughed at the Titans when they made that trade for Julio Jones.
Okay. That's great. But again, the facts I just
doesn't
said
count.
are the facts.
Doesn't count. According to Joe.
But the facts are what I just laid out for you. He had one season of having any kind of injury issues.
But you know, one season of a hamstring issue is not like he tore his ACL and got surgery and went back.
Right.
Julio Jones at the time was 32 years old with a hamstring history.
Okay, but he also, in his games he played that year, he had the same level of production he'd always had. I mean, of course it's a possibility, but this idea that that's just ridiculous that they would have signed him. I mean, if the guy laughed, great, but the information was not clear. The information on Farley, now that as soon as that happened, as you guys may recall, there were people in the league saying like their medical on him came back like a disaster or whatever. We had an athletic story. It was like that's a totally different situation, and that was, to me, I mean, that was John Robinson ignoring, spinning what he got. I don't know, but all these three situations are very different.
So here's what I will say about, and again, I didn't read the PK story, but I know last week PK said that he had heard that the Titans were out on L'Jarius Sneed, and obviously that it was not, reality. Everybody has been lying this entire time. So when it comes to the Titans, they lied, because they told Paul that they were out on L'Jarius Sneed, and thus Paul went on your show and said they were out, and 2 days later they traded for him. So
he said that. But he said today they stopped. They were not in contact on him for a while. Then they got back into it.
Sure. And then
everyone's
the Chiefs
lying all
lied,
the time, except you.
When the Chiefs said, I know, everybody loves to say, well, but they had this asterisk at the end of it that said that if they went, the Chiefs said that they'd be willing to let L'Jarius Sneed play on the tag. That was the report all last week. They're fine. We're fine with L'Jarius Sneed playing on the tag. Then Andy Reid at the owners' meetings told Paul they couldn't do it because of the cap. So something is not right. Somebody's lying at some point there. And then on the Sneed front, I mean, there was this, he demands to be the highest paid player in the league. And then he ended up taking less money than highest paid player in the league. So everybody has lied at some point throughout this process, which is fine. It's par for the course. It's the whole point of this is to be able to detect what's bullcrap and what's not. And in the case of the Chiefs, and everything's been wrong. So like now I'm supposed to say, well, the Titans told Paul that the knees are okay because the Chiefs trainer said they were okay. That makes me even more suspicious of it.
Okay. But one thing to keep in mind on the money thing, Jared, there's also yes, he could have played on the tag.
We're fine with him playing on the tag. We couldn't afford for him to play on the tag.
Right.
Which one is it?
There's two different things. And another thing that people said was that he may not play on the tag. Now, a lot of people threaten that, and then it ends up to be BS too. I understand that. But I think what Andy Reid is talking about is the long-term deal, right? He's not talking about playing on the tag this year. You got to separate those two scenarios.
What's the long-term deal if he plays on the tag?
They were going to negotiate a long-term deal with him, or in his mind, in Sneed's mind, for reporting, or he was not going to play. That's the other aspect of this that you have to consider. Again, do I think he actually was going to follow through on that and not play? Probably not, because a lot of people say that and then they play. But I think when he's talking to Paul about finances, he's talking about the prospect of signing him to a long-term deal after they tag him.
Okay. More Jared versus Joe continuing on the other side here on the program. We're presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville, Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline, go.
All right, so it was announced yesterday, Mitch Barnhart, Kentucky's athletic director, is bringing back Coach Cal. Good move, bad move? Joe, you go first.
That's a good question. I mean, I lean toward
Is it
bad.
because it's college basketball question?
Well, that is in part, but also the only reason I would not go 100% bad is because, you know, 34 million, if you're Kentucky, you got to deal with that. But also there is the question of, you know, like the replacement. But ultimately, you got to make the decision just based on Calipari. And I mean, his tournament success or lack of success last few years is just brutal. His lack of accountability is brutal. So I think what you're doing is setting yourself up for just another disappointing year, and you're going to make the move a year from now. When you make the move a year from now, then I guess it's like 27 million. So what, did you save yourself $6 million by waiting a year? But like, what kind of lack of goodwill from the fans are you going to have? And, you know, I mean, I just, and it's not like a year from now, you're going to have a perfect replacement. Maybe, I guess you can scheme for that in the next few months. And look, the reality with Calipari is, and I do believe this, I told you guys I believe that Oakland could beat them, and they did, but I also had Kentucky in my Final Four, and I absolutely believe this team was good enough to do it. I mean, he's had other teams that have been good enough to do it. They haven't done it. What if you tell me right now that next year they're just going to catch lightning in a bottle and have the perfect mix, and he'll have a couple portal ads this summer that'll go with another amazing recruiting class, and they'll actually get to the Final Four? It wouldn't shock me. And then you're locked in with him. I just feel like this many years of those failures, it's about time. I think it's just about time for both sides. If you don't have a real relationship with your AD, your football coach hates you, and you're failing to this extent, I think at some point it's time to move on. So I think it's a bad move, but there are arguments to make on the other side.
So I think it's a bad move for Kentucky because it tells me that Kentucky is not as committed to winning as Kentucky says they're committed to winning. If you say, you know, the only reason that Kentucky should ever keep a coach is because we think we can win with him. That's the question. Do you think that you can win with Calipari? I'll ask you guys. Caroline, do you think Kentucky can win a title with Calipari?
No.
Joe, do you think Kentucky can win a title with Calipari?
Yeah. Do I think they can? They have.
Oh, here we go.
What are the odds of Cal winning a title with Calipari next season?
Not good. But again, this is one of those, I guess this is where we always get into these semantics things, right?
Who's more likely to win a championship in the next 5 years, Andrew Burnett or Calipari?
Burnett.
Yeah, I'll go Brunette.
Okay. So, like, if that should be the only thing that decides whether or not Kentucky keeps their coach. Do we think we can win with him? If not, it's time to move on. Tubby Smith won too, and then at some point it was time to move on. And so when it comes to Cal, this is it. This was the year that after the St. Peter's loss and the Kansas State loss, like, Cal got back to the basics and Cal made changes to the coaching staff. And like, this was the year. This was the recruiting class. This was it. And they lost to Oakland. And so when it comes to Calipari and it comes to Kentucky, I think that they kept him for the two things Joe brought up, the money, and they're afraid of who else is out there. What's behind door number 2? And the way that Kentucky basketball pumps their chest out is with this idea of invincibility that, you know, we're UK. We can get whoever we want. What do you mean? This idea of, oh, well, we should go get Jay Wright off TV. We'll just go get Billy Donovan. We'll just go get Brad Stevens. What are we talking about? We're UK. And I guess maybe the answer to that is no. Can't even get Scott Drew, maybe. I don't know. Or when it comes to the money, first of all, it was a very buyoutable contract. You know, you guys understand this. I'm talking about you two because you guys cover SEC football enough to know that there are offsets in the contract and it's payable over the 5 years that are left on it, which means if Kentucky gave Cal a big bonus, gave him a big check up front, and they eliminated the offset so that he could go get another job and get paid too, that they could come to an agreement. We all know how this works. And so they could have done that. And so the fact that either the money or the lack of a viable replacement are the reasons they didn't get rid of him. And I'm like, well, then I guess you're just as afraid of the landscape as everybody else. So you're not.
I don't think it could be a lack of a viable replacement. Like, it's still Kentucky.
I agree. Like they should be able to find you find it. There's good coaches to hire, and you put a coach in that situation and with all the advantages, and you should be able to win.
So then it's the money that's holding them back?
Well, I think, or is it also just the holding on to that thread of belief? Like, oh man, he still brings in these amazing teams, and this team was one. That Golke guy goes crazy. I mean, you can talk yourself into things.
You can't do that after St. Peter's.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I mean, I think it's time.
I mean, they're wrong, but I do think that if that is what it is, they're wrong, but I do think that is what it is.
Also, when it comes to that Golke guy hitting 10 threes, I don't know. How about we guard him? Like, I just, what's great is like, what's the bald coach who's a total, Seth Greenberg. He was on TV making excuses for Cal like he always does, and Jay Williams was making excuses. And then they went over to Jay Billis, and he was like, I think the thing Kentucky needs to do is I think Kentucky needs to play better in the tournament. That, I think, is what they need to do. I laughed so hard. It's like that's all it boils down to. So I just, again, if you're Kentucky, you should think that you can get some great coach to replace Cal, that Cal's replaceable, just like Pitino and Tubby and, they all were replaceable. And then, Joe B. Hall and Adolph Rupp, they're all replaceable. And
don't forget Billy Gillespie.
And if it's the money, I mean, you're Kentucky, you should be able to get the money. And again, just tell Cal, like, hey, we'll eliminate the offsets. We'll give you $18 million up front. And then do it. But I guess not. Okay. I am taking the fourth question here. And instead of it being a debate between Jared versus Joe, this is going to be a question for Caroline.
I already know what the question is.
You already know?
I'm assuming.
On Friday's edition of Robbie and Rexroad, I was invited onto the program. And after the Predators had won, I don't know, what was it, the points in 16 straight games at that point before it got to 18? I decided to rehash memory lane when Joe Rexroad in May of 22 told us that John Hines was a good coach and that John Hines deserved a return and that it was an article about how John Hines should not be blamed no matter what happens in that Colorado Avalanche series.
Zero blame.
On Friday, Joe would not apologize. I apologize to you, Joe, because I'm man enough to be able to admit that I was wrong about Oakland after one media timeout last night. All I ask for you to do is and admit that you were wrong about John Hines, and I was right, and this is an example of that.
Yeah, I'm definitely not apologizing, but how's your bracket doing?
Joe, why are you not apologizing?
Dude, I can't even, we don't have time to go back and forth on this. You apologize because you go fly off the handle and have to tweet something after 2 seconds of a game. So good for you for apologizing for it, because that's what you do. You overreact to everything.
But you won't apologize for your years of John Hines defending. So Robbie, I don't want to articulate your own opinion for you, but
okay,
I do feel like you remember vividly, whether it was Joe or Hal or Chris or whoever, you remember the finger wagging and the pointing down to me specifically about the coach. And I
do remember.
And I think going back to that, I think you're on my side on this.
I'm Team Jared. Joe, how do we feel?
Team Jared on what exactly?
Team Jared on Joe needs to apologize.
Joe, you must apologize.
No, I'm not apologizing.
Okay, Caroline, does Joe need to apologize?
First and foremost, I love that response from Robbie because he and I are both in the same position where we really just want to watch the world burn between you two. Like, I don't know if Robbie really believes that, but he
didn't at all.
He just wants to get under Joe's skin. And
I'm sorry. So you're accusing a coworker of saying something that they don't believe.
Yeah, go listen to the rest of it. He admitted it like 2 minutes later. Go listen to the rest of it.
I was busy. I didn't listen to the rest of it.
Jared, you are absurd. You are off your freaking rocker. Is that now our jobs? Is the onus on us to apologize for every single thing that we were wrong about?
I apologize about Oakland.
You got a long list of apologies that are due,
and I make them like when I apologized to Joe.
That.
I came on after all those basketball Benjamins told us watch out for Oakland, and I watch the first media time. I'm like, this team sucks. I'm like, there's no way that they're going to lose to Kentucky. And I tweeted it out. And then they won, and I came on Joe's show, and I said to Joe, as a basketball Benjamin, I said, I'm so sorry that I apologize to you. You are right. Oakland could beat
said
you.
that. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, Joe, I'm so sorry.
Opened the show apologizing. What
I
I want
so
Joe to
wrong.
apologize for is Joe's love of John Hines. Joe and Chris Mason and Hal Gill and all the finger wagging, all those, he's a great coach. You don't understand the game.
Yes. Said that so many times. That he's great. So again, the problem is, Jared, like you're just revising history again with what people said.
Here's what you should apologize for.
No, hold on. I don't change at all. Like my biggest argument to you over and over again was I think the bigger problem with this team is the roster. It's not the coaching. If you tell me which is a bigger problem, it is the roster. He does not have a good roster. That's David Poyle's fault. That was and I absolutely still believe that.
David Poyle's players looking pretty good right now.
How many of them?
Lazan. Evangelista.
That's one that you need to apologize about too.
Yeah,
you called
there you
Jeremy
go.
Lozon an AHL player for the first 2 years.
And then because he
This
was,
is such a minefield.
and he
I mean,
got
this
a
is a
coach.
minefield
I
for
said
you, trying to
yesterday
make
on the
people
show.
apologize.
I
It's a
said
minefield.
yesterday on the show with Barry Trotz. I watched Jeremy Lazan play, and I didn't even think he belonged in the NHL. And Trotz smiled and kind of had like a head nod, like, oh yeah,
Oh
so.
God.
And so I'm just saying, Caroline, does Joe need to apologize?
No, he does not need to apologize.
Thank
You
you.
are off your rocker. And what I would love to do if I had the time is go back to every absurd take that you have ever had, but frankly, I don't have the time.
Let me
And
just
I'd
say
like
this.
to make a list.
We need to
Joe
hire
won't
someone just for this job.
apology.
Joe
and all
won't
the
apologize
apologies
about his
that
nothing
you
burger
owe.
comments. My favorite is Joe not apologizing about his nothing burger comments and then writing a story in The Athletic about how it was a something burger. And this is the same way. He just doesn't have to do it, so he's not going to do it. And let me just say this. If I'm right about Rand Carthon, you all are getting it. I mean, I'm just saying, I will never stop when I am, if I'm proven
you know
right.
why?
About Rand
Because
Carthon.
Caroline and I have been saying he's amazing. He's the best GM ever. He's done nothing wrong. All of these moves are perfect, and they're going to work out. That's how you will frame it down the road, right? Yes, because that's what you do.
Caroline, who
Which is not true. That's not what we said.
Jared, you really do deserve a loss based off of all of the apology baiting that you have asked Joe to do. I mean, that is just absolutely not. He does not owe you an apology. But on the other hand, I think that the compensation for L'Jarius Sneed has to be a red flag, and to say that it's not, I think is naive and overly optimistic. Like, it might not, like, the knees might not be a problem. There might not be any issue with L'Jarius Sneed at all. But doesn't it just make you raise an eyebrow just the teeniest, tiniest bit? And also, like, to Jared's point about the Predators getting to the Western Conference Final or the Stanley Cup Final, like, it does sound pretty crazy right now. But, like, why not? Like, why couldn't they?
Oh, I agree. I'm just forced to make a prediction.
And I disagree with your prediction.
So?
Okay.
Jared wins.
Okay.
Thank you. I feel like I'm like the Tommy Mansky AAU back-to-back-to-back national champion that Fred McGriff fully endorses. Way to go. How you feel about that,
All right,
Joe?
easy. You still got some apologies that you owe people.
No.
You have not won 3 in a row.
I need one apology to me, and that's Joe. Thank you guys so much. Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. We got a ton of phones. People want to get in on this, so that's what we're going to do. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. Just let them do it. And this month is Happy's Golden Ticket Sweepstakes at Hiller. Enter to win at HillerGoldenTicket.com. All you have to do is enter your email, and you're automatically entered to win. Prizes include a $5,000 Hiller gift card and a $1,000 Hiller gift card, or one of 10 Happy Hiller Club memberships. Or take advantage of zero-interest financing for 12 months on select new HVAC systems, tankless water heaters, or whole home generators. Do not miss out. Enter to win now. That's HillerGoldenTicket.com. My guys at Hiller, they're fabulous. They take great care of my home. They'll do the same for you. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Stillman and Company reacting to Jared versus Joe. Another victory in Jared versus Joe. Is that 2 in a row or 3 in a row, Ian?
I think 2.
It might be 2. It might be 3. I don't know. I'm starting to feel like the Atlanta Braves of the 1990s or the Atlanta Braves of right now. I mean, it's just like back to back to back. Now, that is going to guarantee that I'll lose next week. Skylar texts in, our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, and says, Joe says dumb stuff 24/7 and never apologizes. Love you, Jared. And then says, Jared says dumb stuff 24/7 and never apologizes. Love you, Jared. I'm thinking he originally meant me saying dumb stuff 24/7. I apologize all the time. I admit when I'm wrong all the time. I don't understand this. We talk about it every day. Jared Stillman never says when he was wrong. And then I list about 19 examples of when I said I was wrong. You can't say I never apologized. I apologized at the beginning of that hit on Friday with Robbie and Joe when I said, hey, I said that the basketball bennies were off their rockers for thinking Oakland could beat Kentucky, and Oakland did beat Kentucky. I mean, what are we doing here? Like, you can't say I never apologized. I apologized in the cut we played. So come on now. Gotta be fair. Gotta be fair. That's all I ever say about this program. And if Rand Carthon wins 3, if Rand Carthon wins, I've said this so many times, they could give that man the Super Bowl trophy. And they could say, what do you think now, Jared? They could give him the trophy, and he could say, screw Jared Stillman, who after that disastrous press conference, when I tried to tell the fans that we had a bad football team because the ball didn't bounce our way, got on my rear end. And now I'm holding the Vince Lombardi trophy. And I'll be okay with that. And I'll come on the air and I'll say I was wrong. But I've said I was wrong plenty of times. The problem is that I'm way more right than I am wrong. And because I'm willing to say that I'm wrong, I am going to point out when I'm right, because what happens is most of the time people just ignore it like, oh, no, they had to do it, had to move on from John Hines. There was nothing we could have done there. We couldn't. You're the same people that were finger wagging us saying, oh, this coach, he's so good, you don't know hockey. Don't be giving me that. Can't do that. One texter says Joe should apologize for what he said about Joe Milton being Tennessee's biggest game. Okay, so there was a moment in the Preds win last night that if you were at the game, it changed the entire game. If you weren't at the game, you probably don't even know that it happened. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook and my official sportsbook app. Because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, and you can even pick who's going to win it all. My favorite was I heard Robbie doing his FanDuel spot earlier today. He said, I've been telling you about Purdue. I'm like, you mean the number 3 overall seed in the country? Yeah, pretty good. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. 21 and over in President Tennessee. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issue is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after a seat. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Sent it in deep. Left wing corner for Nashville. Forsberg tipped it, going in front. Patera goes down, the puck to the net. Predators are down 1. That was just sticking to it.
Vegas is challenged that the play was offside.
Oh, here we go. Are they done? Looks like they're getting off the headset. Man, this is tough. And you can tell it was the two linesmen that have to, they're making the call and they're huddling up right now.
A lot of offside challenges are very quick reviews. This was not.
After review has determined that the play was onside, we have a good goal.
So an enormous play. It is indeed Forsberg's 40th goal of the year.
Golden Knights blocked it. Forsberg in front, off the chest of Patera. Now the shot to score! Nyquist ties it up! A power play goal! Oh my! It's 4-4!
I was pretty confident. I think from the angles I got, the views I got, I think it would be really hard to say it wasn't, or was offside. I thought it wasn't. So I think when those ones, and they take time, I think you feel that probably they're going to make the right decision.
So, last night, the game turned, the Preds won the game. And if you were watching on TV, it was incredible. And if you were at the game, it was incredible. But if you were at the game, you know the moment that changed everything. In the arena, during a TV timeout, you know how every now and then they show the celebrities that are at the game, and it's like, oh, hey, let's welcome, I'm trying to think of the most random celebrity I could think of. Let's welcome Wayne Brady from Let's Make a Deal. And he's up there just waving his hands in the air. And the fans are like, oh, and then every now and then you get like a big local celebrity and the fans go crazy. And then every now and then, you get somebody and they get booed, like when I got booed. But last night they showed Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC. And when they showed Greg Sankey on the Jumbotron, people booed. And I actually thought it was quite funny. And again, I think this goes back to Sankey's comments about the tournament last week that were not very well received. And you could see on Sankey's face when he got booed, they showed him up there. And again, when they show you on the Jumbotron, the initial reaction is a little bit of a wave and a, hey, let's welcome Jared Stillman. Like, hey, fans. And so that's what Greg Sankey did. And the fans booed. Boo! And Sankey, you could see, kind of rolled his eye. Like, I don't want to say rolled his eyes, but kind of like, okay, great. Commissioners always get booed, though the SEC commissioner, usually in the South, is usually pretty liked. But as soon as that happened, the Predators caught fire. I believe they scored goal 2 right after that, then 3, then 4, then overtime. And I think that Greg Sankey is good luck for the Predators. I think they need to bring him back to as many games as possible. And I think he needs to embrace being booed because I think it might be like a momentum thing. And if Greg's upset about being booed, trust me, I've been booed at the games. I think it's because they hate us because they ain't us. Preds Insiders is next.